Welcome to Stasis Geek and Film Club. Had to add that into the end. A little bit of Scream for Halloween. A little bit early for Halloween, but the wheel of fortune, the wheel of film told us to do it today. And as always, I'm here with Sandy and Jade from Nerd Takes. How are you two?
Oh my God, what a great
Scared.
start.
I was expecting that. That was great.
I didn't want to say it to you guys, so I had to put it in.
No, I'm excited to talk about this one. I think it's going to be one of our more interesting reviews.
Yes, it's slasher, not slasher, but slasher. If that makes sense, it's like that. So yeah, it's a good one. This is my pick. This was definitely I'm 100% my pick. It's a great B movie. Let's do that. Let's call it that as it is. I know this is a lot of people's hearts. This is like one that I'm guessing the setting and the age thing. I'm guessing if you're an 80s kind of kid brought up like you're doing that babysitting and then watching this in the 80s in America, in that kind of suburb of like America, it's going to scare the crap out of you. And but yeah, the setting's good. I like it. I think it's well done for the budget. It has holes, but I still like this movie because of what it represents and where it came from. And it Michael Myers, let's call it Michael Myers, is literally the face of William Shatner, hair ripped out, painted white, has become iconic. And I love that story behind it as well.
Is that the history behind the mask?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the prop department. Well, as it wasn't really a prop department, it was who could get it. Was going. We need a mask. We need something, and the guy just went into like the local whatever dress up shop, grabbed a William Shatner, ripped out all the hair, painted it white, and that's how it became iconic.
I never knew that.
So
That is
actually,
that's brilliant.
if you watch it now again, you'll be like, "Oh my god!"
I'm trying to picture it now. Yeah, that actually makes sense. I did not know that. That's interesting.
That's how cheap it was. That mask was that cheap. But yeah, it's iconic. It's an iconic that look, that with the knife going for it,
the mechanic suit, the whole deal. Yep.
Yeah, so we're doing it after. I know, guys, we're doing it after Friday the 13th, and it would have made sense if we were doing Friday the 13th like that. But we're doing Halloween. But
we have to obey the wheel of film. We must.
Yeah, we have
the wheel of film. But you mentioned the mask and the and the knife and that even just kind of holding it over his head. That has been repeated and replicated so many times in so many television shows and other films. And so to your point about what this film is versus what it means is it's kind of the beginning of that genre. And it's not perfect. It's not a great historical groundbreaking film in terms of cinematography or writing or acting, but it is the beginning of an entire genre of film. And replication or imitation is the best form of flattery, and this film's been imitated quite a bit.
There has been loads of rip-off. I think we'll go into it more. There are aspects of this that makes this movie more iconic, and I think there's certain bits, if you take out not the storyline, there's other parts into this how it looks and how he sounds and all that, and we're going to more that makes this iconic. Now we probably have to the music, how it opens. I think the opening sequence to this movie is absolutely brilliant, but there is a flaw to it. And I love the flaw, and I didn't realize it until I watched it with my girlfriend who hates horror movies, and then she told me the flaw, and then I was like, yeah, but you shouldn't be looking at that.
Don't look here, look over there.
Don't look at it. Okay, so everybody knows the kind of the music. Go on, was it? How's it go again? Oh my god, I just didn't So what we've got is we get the first introduction of Michael Myers as a kid. I love this image. I'm going to leave this image here because it's freaky. And I love this opening sequence because how it is shot, I think John Carpenter, how we shot this is very, very clever. Now, because what you see is point of view. You see it from what you don't, of course, when you rewatch it, you know it's a child. But when you first see it, how his arm quickly moves in and out, you go, oh, that's a bit of strange. That's a bit weird. It's a different angle. And they bring it from a different angle. If you look at the thing, they do it from a child's height. But they don't show you it's a child. So when you get that, he's coming home from trick-or-treating, and he goes around the house and he sees as he will be his sister in later movies. Like they really go into that. But this movie is his one sister, and he goes in and she's making out with her boyfriend. Yep. And they go in, and then he goes, looks through the windows, a bit freaky. It could be a stalker. And then it goes in around the back, and then you see open door and the little hand. Then he grabs the knife. And at that point, I remember when I first watched it, I was like, is that a kid? Is what? And then like you kind of you feel you still in your head, stalker, or some kind of psycho. And then it slowly goes like you see the boyfriend leave. He's buttoning up. They blatantly had a 38-second sex. Like, let's just call it that. That was a quickie. Let's just say that was a quickie. So he scarpers, and of course Michael goes upstairs to see his sister combing her hair. I think she's got her knickers on, panties, whatever you want to call them. Combing her hair on her dresser, and then he stands there. And before that, he picks up the mask, is it
like a clown mask?
Yeah, I think just like
just like
almost like a superhero type of mask.
Yeah, and then it goes into kind of like really that kind of view for everybody who's watching, and it gets a bit creepy. And then he's watching. You kind of this could be a kid. What is going on? And then of course, Michael, what are you doing? Because she's got her breasts out and all that, and it's his sister. So she turns, and then he kind of just unleashes, starts stabbing. Why? He doesn't speak. And then, of course, it comes down the stairs, calm as anything. And then you see he's what I'm guessing is his parents. They don't really see them ever again. Come out, and Michael, what's happened? And then and then I love this shot is because you get to see the kid, this innocent child, really, who's literally bludgeoned. And then John Carpenter did a very clever thing. He panned out and then didn't say anything, just panned out. And I love that because then you see the iconic shape of the house.
Normal house, normal neighborhood.
Yes. Now, this is where the flaw was, with my girlfriend.
I also noticed one here, and I wonder if it's the same one.
And then I was like, because I never noticed before, because I'm stringent on the kid. I was like, interested in the kid. And then she was like, the parents aren't moving. One of them's going to run in the house. And I went, one of them's going to take the knife away. What is going on? I was like,
at least just asking, like, Michael, what is that? What's happening? That was my first thought. I'm like, why are the parents, not only are they not reacting at all, they're standing perfectly still, almost as if the direction from John Carpenter must have been, all right, nobody move. We're going to do a nice pan out silhouette. And it's like,
exactly.
They'd be reacting at seeing their, 8-year-old son holding a giant butcher knife covered in blood, wondering, did somebody attack somebody in the house? Did you take that from the person? Did you there's no reaction from the parents. And and I agree with you. Everything about this scene, I actually really liked in terms of a setup of the movie, the character, the kind of perspectives that they're going to be given. Because they do a lot of kind of not as much through Michael's eyes, but kind of over his shoulder looks and things like that at what he's stalking. So it was a nice setup for how the movie was going to be until he missed that major flaw of why wouldn't the parents be.
But when I've watched this multiple times and I never noticed it.
Yeah.
And it was even to the point that I noticed it and I was like, oh my God, even the mother's got her hands in her pockets.
Yeah. And
I was like, she's just standing with her hands in her pockets. Right. I was like, oh no, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I was like that. But
I'll tend to get in because my girlfriend and I always I gotta make sure I don't do that to her again. My wife and I, my wife and I, we always it's I kind of, weird watch. I know a lot of people like them, like murder documentaries. I don't know. There's always been something we find very fascinating to try to get a peek behind the mind of just these people who go, like, how does somebody go from, one day a freshborn baby to this psychotic killer? So we'll watch a lot of these things, your John Wayne Gacy documentaries, Ted Bundy, all that kind of stuff, just because it's interesting. Usually around this type of year when we look for spooky, creepy things to watch. And every so often we'll get in a wormhole of like the YouTube documentary versions of them where they talk about smaller, lesser known cases of, a kid who comes up in a normal family and all of a sudden just commits this horrible crime and the parents' reaction, all that. Every time you watch one of those, you see the parents, and maybe this is why it stuck out to me because we've watched quite a few. You see like the reaction of the mothers once they realize what the kids have done is almost always like drop to your knees, uncontrollable crying of like, what did you do? What happened? All that. So the image of kind of seeing those documentaries on these horrible type of things contrasted with the image of this one where they're just standing there like statues was just so bizarre. Like typically the father runs in to figure out what's going on. The mother just drops to knees crying because she can't fathom what just happened. And it just felt like this scene was so good until it misses that human reaction of this type of scenario.
It should have been like the. Sorry,
the only thing I think maybe because I noticed it as well, and then after rewatching the film and then watching some of the criticism and reviews and really deep discussion, including a really good interview with John Carpenter, they're purposely in this movie there is no backstory, and John Carpenter very specifically says this movie stands alone. He disregards the sequels.
Oh, did he not work on the sequels? I didn't realize
he did, but he was kind of forced to. That's
see.
a whole other
contractually things like that, I'm sure.
But maybe it's because we don't know if this weird behavior by this kid is normal for these maybe there is blood dripping from the knife, but maybe seeing this kid in a clown costume holding a knife, maybe that's just something they've been dealing with. Who knows?
Killed the cat.
There's an odd the lack of reaction is odd, but we purposely don't know the backstory here, so that might be something that's it's obviously way off. Maybe it's even more way off than we're allowed to know in this. And again, Carpenter said there is no backstory, kind of like what I mentioned on another episode when I think we referred to something about The Sopranos and David Chase saying we don't have to worry about if Tony Soprano is alive or dead at the end because the story has ended. There is
spoilers, anyone?
There is no next scene. And similarly here, there is no backstory. So that's just something to take into account.
I agree, like the creator of The Sopranos, I agree a little bit more with his use of it at the end of a story that's been told. I actually kind of almost like that, to be honest with you. I think it's an interesting take and an interesting way to kind of frame the way that they ended that show. Whether people are, whether or not people want to buy that or not, I know that was always a controversial ending. But see, for me, I understand the concept and that thinking from John Carpenter, but I also feel like it's hard to say you didn't want to do a backstory when you are giving us a look at him, 15 years, I think, from the time frame. I think this was 63 in this scene. The movie takes place in 78, so about 15 years there. You almost would have had to have not included this for me to buy that, because this does feel like it is part of a backstory because you're doing right. It almost doesn't. It almost feels like maybe that was something he came up with afterwards to kind of combat people pointing out certain things in the movie. Only because this just, to see, it's like anything. It's like seeing Bruce Wayne before he's Batman. It feels too much like it is telling the backstory for me to buy that. It's entirely not. Even if that is his explanation of it. Yeah. And honestly, and even that, I can still buy this as the backstory because, you have seen some horror stories where young children do, horrific. There was a few things here in the States of like a Slender Man one that happened maybe 15 years ago. I'm sure, Sandy, you might remember that one. It was pretty big. A couple young girls, a young girl who like did a horrible crime to another young girl. So you do see these unfortunate stories of kids doing these horrific things. So you like, again, I like that this is the backstory of who Michael Myers is. He's not just some weird guy who broke out of an insane asylum in 1978. Like there was some kind of history to it. So I almost wish he leaned into the fact more that there is an origin to Michael Myers, at least himself. Even if there's not an origin story, maybe, in its fullest, at least we got a glimpse of how this guy ended up in an insane asylum. Because I think it plays really well with Donald Pleasence's lines. I can't remember his name Loomis, I think his name in the movie.
Loomis. Ding, ding, ding. We have a repeat performance. Yep. Donald Pleasence last week. Donald Pleasence this week.
And not to jump too far ahead.
We just actually said before you came on that we had a connection. We had, Miller's Crossing, Country and Old Men. No Country Old Men had a connection.
Coen Brothers.
We're trying, Coen Brothers. Saturday Night Fever was a standalone, and then Great Escape and Halloween has a connection. So next one we think standalone, and then it's going to be connection.
We've got a pattern.
Unless somebody can actually think of a connection between Saturday Night Fever and all.
I don't have one yet. Maybe we can find an executive producer or something.
I think you should not try to understand the psychology behind the wheel of film.
Probably
kind of mess up the universe. Yeah, you may disturb the universe if you try to understand the wheel of film.
Yeah, but just like go back to this picture. Let's say that. So I said I watched some of a few documentaries. I watched one of the big ones. So the writer Deborah Hill, she was, I'm guessing, a lot. We don't get. I don't think we get it a lot in the UK to clowns at birthday parties.
I've never in my life. So I was born in the 90s, early 90s. Came up through the 90s and early 2000s in terms of growing up as a kid and doing kid birthday parties, going to them. Never in my life has there ever been a clown. Yeah. I don't know if this is a Hollywood thing or maybe a thing before my time, but I've never seen it. I've never seen it.
That was that was her point, because she was going in the 60s to birthday parties, and in the 50s and 60s there was always a clown, and she said it scared the living crap out of her. And now people have all got scary clowns, don't like clowns. What a effing hell's a clown, and you like drill a killer and like that, clowns out of space and all that. You've got all those, but like that purposely was put there because she freaked out about a clown. And I think later on is people are scared of clowns. Literally, it's mad. So that's why the clown's there, because she hated clowns, and she thought, that's it. And I think that is good. Like a lot of people would go, yeah, I hate clowns.
So, well, it probably stems from all these, clowns showing up at kids' parties, scaring the crap out of them, because kids don't like makeup and fun. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're not super in, because I got a niece right now, and if you come up to her with a bunch of face paint on, she's 4 years old. If you come up to her with face, she'll get a little skittish of any stranger coming up. Never mind one with this whole gimmick and crazy outfit and look. So they just scared the crap out of these kids when they were kids at all these birthday parties that they just grew up with the fear of clowns.
But yeah, it's a. I must say this movie, I think that it really sets the scene. It sets the scene. It sets the environment we're gonna get, but we don't know Michael, and I think the next transition, I get why they did it, because it's a B movie. I hate the next scene. It's the transition of Donald Pleasence with the nurse in a thunderstorm, driving in the middle of nowhere to, I'm guessing, they don't really say where it is. It's just they're going to somewhere. But then you find out they're going to, I guess, in a sane asylum, a hospital. And I don't like this scene because I think it's rushed. I think it's too rushed. I think they don't where you're not supposed to have a backstory, but at least explain a little bit. And I think there's inserts in this to explain how Michael kind of gets where he's going to, because in this scene it's a bit of a rubbish scene. So you get the nurse, she's driving, and they get to kind of around the corner and they see, the patients, let's call it, or whatever.
But before they see them, they're talking to each other, and it's total exposition.
Yeah,
it's all that stuff that they wouldn't be talking about if they were the real people, because he's explaining the whole story, she's explaining the whole story. Why are we even having it here? Oh, we'll heal. And it's the whole what's happened from little
Right.
boy till now in a car ride. And it was just
it's such a clunky, just like you said, it's an exposition dump, and it's a clunky one at that, because exactly like you said, this is a nurse and a doctor. They would already know what they need to know about this. They're not going to coincidentally start talking about what they need to know about this, or he's not going to tell her what she needs to know about this patient 5 minutes before they turn around the corner, or as they're actually turning the corner to what they're about to do. They would know. They would know his medical history. He obviously knows the medical history. They would have already shared this information with each other. He's not waiting till they're at the place to warn her of all these things. It just feels like a really clunky exposition dump. And then on top of that, it's more backstory, because he's talking about how Michael hasn't spoken in 15 years and he's been on his case. Was it at this point, or maybe it was when he was with the cop, that he's talking about a little bit more about his history?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think
right, a little bit in this part too, where he's just like, yep, 15 years been, working with this guy, or the first X amount was working with him, the next amount was just trying to keep him locked up, realizing that he's a monster. So again, it just feels like more background and more backstory that they're trying to give to Michael, which again, I mean, I'm fine with in terms of it as a principle, but to know that he, tried to go on to say later that there was no backstory to this, it just feels a little conflicting with what
I think when they probably was right.
Yeah,
I think when they were writing it, I think they had the opening sequence and they were like, that's great. But then if they had Michael just turn up in the town, how did he get there? And I think this is this scene. How did they? Because there's literally that, and of course,
why that town?
The Donald Province would go on to like when he finds the truck,
right?
And that's like that. And this is, I think these are inserts of they're like, oh, we can't connect A to B. How can we do that? And I think this is it, because it's very cheaply filmed. It's terrible dialogue. It really is. Bad. The only people I felt sorry for was the I suppose like the cast in the background, who are blatantly in, like, they must have gone, oh, it's raining, go. Like literally bad lighting, but you can see these like what supposed to be patients in the field behind a fence just wandering around. And and the worst thing is the worst dialogue is when she comes around and she went, they just let him wander in the grounds. And I'm like,
of course not.
Really? You're a nurse. You think they would just let him out whilst it's literally like torrential rain? It's like it's terrible. And of course, then they pull up to the gates. Donald Pleasence Loomis kind of goes to open up the gates, and then you see part of Michael. You don't know who it is, and he jumps on the top of the car, and then of course he gets in, drags the nurse, and then she gets out, and then he takes the car, and it's it's that bit. I think he even says like, he's gone. They're like, or the lunatic is gone. He says something like that, doesn't he? He said something very coy of like, it's him, even though. But how did you know that?
Yeah, there was like 10 of them standing out there.
It could have been anyone, but he knew it was him. So that kind of,
you don't understand what we're dealing with.
Right.
It just feels too much like, okay, we need to hit this A plot point, this B plot point, this C plot point, and we're just going to force our way through no matter. There's not much logic or fluidness to these scenes taking place.
Yeah, when you see it, like, well, probably now, it's like Donald Pleasence. He didn't want to do the movie, and it's very weird. So they first I can't remember the production, like it's a billionaire, millionaire, whatever. I put millionaire at the time. He wanted a star. I need a star in this movie. Like it's all B match. So they originally wanted they
wanted oh my gosh, help me. Peter Cushing, didn't they?
Peter Cushing, yes. Peter Cushing first. Peter Cushing turned it down. Then they went Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee turned it down. Then they went Donald Pleasence. He turned it down, but I can't remember if it was his daughter or son had watched in England Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah.
And he was like, who directing it? And he was like, oh, this nobody called John Carpenter. And it was because they were like, oh, he's a really good actor. I've just watched this one. You need to do it. He's really good. And he was like, oh, managed to get into that, got a little bit more money, and he agreed to do it. But then apparently got on set, hated every minute of it because it was so low budget. there's a he admits like one of the like an interview things when they final screening and like and all that, he apparently then took John Carpenter to the side and apologized for his what he was like on set.
Oh, wow.
Because so he owned up to when I understand your vision, like that's it. Because apparently he was an arse on set, he didn't get it, just didn't like it, and it was like that. But I think that goes on to what we'll speak about a bit later with how John Carpenter got the most out of this film.
Since we've mentioned the just a little bit about the background, do you want to put up the notes slide just so we can there we go. So just so we can all be on the same notes page. This was released in 1978, and it's called kind of the watershed film that launched the kind of 80s teen horror slasher films, but it was in 1978, but we're going into the 1980s. It was not a book, so I didn't have a book to read. I thought, because there is a book called Halloween, the book came after the film. So the book novelized the screenplay that was written by John Carpenter. One interesting point about the movie poster, and this is the original movie poster. There were several, and there are some now reproductions of this poster that are not correct. Most important to John Carpenter was that his name go above the title of the film. Now, normally it's, the top bill star, but this was one of those first films, and then future films from him, would have, John Carpenter, and we can think of other ones like Martin Scorsese or, whomever. But he was one of the first to insist that his name go above the title of the film, which I thought was kind of interesting. And they said, yeah, sure, whatever. And we know who's in the film: Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasence. Of note, Tony Moran is the guy who is Michael Myers as an adult. And there, the rest of the cast, not to be rude, I've never heard of anyone else in this cast. So really it is, essentially those three in the film. So thanks for putting the notes up, Stacey.
Yeah, I think there was I'd say, I'm going back to the documentary, Jamie Lee Curtis is introduced. This is her first, and they just hired her off her parents. That was it. That was it. They were hoping they would get the same. They would get a pull into that environment just because things are like the I can't remember which the producer's name. He's a bit of a let's say Hollywood slime. He knows how to pull the strings and how to talk to people. And his concept was, before it was even written, he wanted to do this kind of movie, and he wanted to use Halloween. And he was like, I bet somebody's used the word Halloween in the movie before, and nobody had ever done it. And I find that
Wow.
amazing. Like for 90. I'm guessing when the production came into place, 1975, there is no film before its time that had the word Halloween in it. And he couldn't believe it, so he clutched it. He brought it in, copyright, like we're doing it, rubber stamp, whatever, to get it done. And then he was obliged to do it, or he would have lost loads of money. And he just whined himself. It is even to the guy, I can't remember, I can't pronounce his name, who comes up the top screen, who the film by, and it's just one guy's name. They kind of went to his ego. He's like, yeah, you can't afford this film. And they knew it would play up to him, it would annoy him. And then he goes, how much money you need? And that's why he was like, throw it.
Well, that worked.
Yeah, that kind of worked. Yeah, it was kind of, who you got? We got this, great new up and coming director, John Carpenter. What's he done? And I didn't realize a sort of Precinct 13 was more well received in Europe than it was in America until I watched this documentary.
It was okay. The remake was probably received better, or at least
Ethan Hawke. That was
brought more attention to the original after the remake.
I hate that movie. I think it's really bad.
I've never seen the remake, but it's the one that comes to mind first when
I mean the original. I don't like the original. A remake I can subtly take. The original, I just don't like it.
I had never seen the remake, and I didn't realize there was an original till I was going through John Carpenter's filmography when I was watching this one. The remake is the one I want to say it was like early 2000s ish when it came
Got to
out or
be,
something
yeah.
like that.
Sounds
So
about right.
that one, at
Yeah.
least for me, that was the first one that came to mind when I hear that.
Well, and just to kind of, you hit on, Jamie Lee Curtis. This was her, introducing. This was her first film, and him, using her because of her parents. John Carpenter, huge fan of Alfred Hitchcock, huge fan of Psycho, and one of his influences in trying to create more suspense than horror or slashing was Psycho. And so he was a big fan of Janet Leigh. So using Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh's daughter, was a big personal win for him. Like that was just something he absolutely wanted to do, was to have her in this film. It was the next few scenes, as we're standing around after the car has been taken, you don't understand. You don't know who, you have no idea what you're dealing with. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The next few scenes, I now watching this at home, versus watching this in the movie theater. I never saw it in the movie theater, and I assume it was, obviously dark, but probably easier to see when you're in a darkened movie theater. I could not, from this point on, even the outdoor scenes were purposely filmed darker, dingier. This is not a bright neighborhood. The girls are coming home from school. It's not, bright, shiny, happy. It's so dark and so, I don't know, kind of a depressed filter used, and no adults. Right? So right away you realize, like, where are the adults? There's the police officer, there's the Donald Pleasence, and there's, we had already seen the nurse. But this empty, neighborhood with a few leaves blowing around in the empty street, with such little action going on. I can understand it setting a stage for, a horror, scary vibe. I didn't get the horror, scary vibe. I got more of a bored vibe. I was kind of not interested. The setting of the scene took my interest away, following this scene where, this dramatic, nurse being pulled out of a car being stolen. My interest in this film just really went away at this point. So I'm interested to hear how you feel about how the setting worked for this film.
I think the set, like, because they go in straight with they're like straight from school, don't they? They kind of got their books. They've got the two of them, and then the third one, of course, pops in, and then they're kind of they're like, is this like they're just walking? No, sorry,
walking home from school.
Walking home from school, isn't it, kind of thing? And it's kind of, it's just, I think it's supposed to show you're in a boring, like nothing's going on. It's like an America that, people just live. You just live in. These are your houses. It's a nice, clean, friendly. Nobody has to care about it. It's like, there's no crime really probably happens here. I think it's supposed to set that down, like it's dull. It's safe. That's why you don't see a car go by, like the set for one. And it's just like, it's like how the girls are talking. I just kind of set up like, it's supposed to be, look, we're really bored like this, we're just earning things. Like it's when they can't start talking about the boys, I suppose, like that. It's obvious it's one of those places where they've all had a bit of each other, if that makes sense. They've all dated one of their friends.
Small town, high school type of thing.
It's kind of like that. So I think it sets it up good, but I completely agree. The pacing makes it, the setting is very boring. But I think that was done on purpose. And I mean that things, because when you do get little bit on the slight glimpses of Michael, because you just kind of get that, there he is, gone. And he's gone. I think it's supposed to be there. It's like everything else is boring, and when that happened, it takes your eye. It goes, "Whoa, what's happening there?" And it brings you back to boring. And I think that was purposely maybe not, but in my mind, I think that was purpose. That it's supposed to get you right down to a level you're like, oh, especially in the cinema, you've got to watch it. Like you can't go on like these days, you can't go on your mobile or whatever. But when you're in the cinema, you've got to kind of stare at this kind of long, prolonged. Again, it's dialogue that is just there. It's just they're just a narrative. It's not about a story. It's just they're just chatting. They're just chatting crap. And then of course, dump Michael, Michael, and then, or a little glimpse of something else, Michael. And I think that is supposed to be like there's what, and then back to boring, the mundane. Michael, it's like something weird happening.
So,
but
the way I took it is a little bit of kind of a bridge between the two of you, where I do agree with Stasis on the side of I think it was done purposefully, but then I also agree with Sandy where I think it was probably done a little bit too overdone in terms of that, because I do think they nailed that suburban America vibe where things are nice. You can walk down the street, you don't have to worry about crime, those type of things. A nice, safe, and in the eyes of teenagers, boring town. Because I grew up in a similar safe, nice little boring town, and as teenagers we were involved.
Don't rename chat then. Was it a sleepy now?
So like there is that. I did relate to that vibe of like I remember leaving school with the buddies and just going for, on the bikes, or at the time when we could drive, going for drives. It's like, this town's so boring. Is there any plans this weekend? Who's doing what with whose parents are way to use the house for, parties and all that. So I think they captured, a good chunk of that with the teenagers just being, bored in the town, but obsessed with their own kind of little life of high school and the boys and all that kind of stuff. But there was a part where it's a little overdone that the town just felt empty. Like Sandy said, like there's not, I could understand not as many cars as a city going down, but there's almost like no car on the road unless it's the police officer or Michael Myers. And it's like, that seems a little unrealistic. And like you said, there's not a lot of adults in the movie, outside of her father telling her to put the key under the Myers house, Donald Pleasence, and then the cop, who's the other girl's father. You can see how you don't see teachers, you don't see much of anything really. Well, you see one.
You can see how low budget is because you have I can't remember the kid's name that she's babysitting.
Tommy, I think.
Tommy, is it? So when you first meet Tommy, she's crossing the road, and that's the first bit going to school, and he's like, "Oh, what are we doing? Like, can we make something? I can't remember what it was. Can we watch some TV?
Jack-o'-lantern,
yes.
all that.
Yeah, like that. So like that. And then the next scene, you really see him is at school, and there's properly it's blatantly like the end of school, and there's 5 kids hanging around. It's like that, and then
empty.
and even in the trick-or-treating, when you see the trick-or-treating, it's you see she sees 4 or 5 kids in front, but then you only have Tommy and the other girl,
Lindsay,
I can't remember her. Yeah, whatever. But that's it. But that just shows how B movie this was, how low budget this was, because they couldn't afford. We can't do a whole high school
can't afford people.
Right.
Yeah, we can't afford people. We can. Yeah, what can we get? Who's got a kid? And I'm guessing a lot of the kids were probably hands of somebody, or just people pulled around because it's blatantly obvious they were like, we need to pull in some favors, or do you have a kid? As your cousin got a kid, bring them along. They can be in a movie.
Right. And like I said, I do think part of it was done intentionally for the setting the scene and kind of setting this nice, quiet, suburban, boring town in the eyes of these teenagers, and probably purposely done for the budget side of things. But then also, it's hard to ignore the fact that it does just come off as, one, a little empty, and two, just kind of sets a little bit of a boring pace for the basically everything between the escape scene up until we really started to see Michael again. I felt like a whole big chunk of this in the middle there felt a little bit boring.
Yeah, there's a lot of getting to the point of the movie. If that's it. So that's why I think it's right, because this is you get the walk along, you get the girls kind of talking, and then you kind of get then they go back into I suppose you kind of bored a bit, they got boyfriends. They're all sexually active. It's Jamie Lee's Curtis.
Jamie Lee's like the studious, kind of nerdy, probably girl who doesn't do as much, and she gets that across fairly well. And
and I think she's probably out of that. She's the virgin out of all of them. She's the kind of like, I'm a book nerd, and I kind of that's all she does. And then it's kind of go back is like there's a good point to recognize that is when they do the classroom scene. And I can't remember what the class is, but they're talking anyway, and you hear the teacher talking, and then her eye draws from outside to the stolen car. Michael Myers is there. You can just see him, and he looks a bit weird, but you can't see his full mask face, but it's him. We know it's him, and then she looks, and then she gets answer the question. Is it Laurie? That's Laurie. And then she like instantly goes into, I suppose, like, you know, bookworm talk. No, she instantly knows the answer. And then she goes back, and then she looks, and he's gone. And that's kind of like, we know he's like back home, because there is also, we skipped over one scene is when you actually see her father. I'm guessing it's a father or uncle, maybe. We don't know. And they give the key, and I'm guessing he's a real estater. Yeah. And then Tommy goes, you can't go up there. And then she puts the keys underneath the mat. And then that's the first kind of glimpse of, like you said, just the like a quick head out of Michael going on. And then I think the rest, what we just spoke about, kind of falls into place there. But that is kind of like, you get that, you know, he's back, and then you see he's back. But why is he? I like this bit, and I know the future movie is going into more of it, but I like it because you don't know, is he now hunting her because she approached the house, right? Or is he what's going on?
That's how I took it, because to be honest with you, as you were just describing this classroom scene, and I remember him being out there, I'm thinking to myself, like, but why the hell is he actually stalking her? I forget. And to me, now that you reminded me of the door and the key in the mat scene, I have to assume that's why he's just got home or back home, and this happens to be the first person that come up to the door. And coincidentally enough, she does have a resemblance to his sister, given that when he had killed his sister, she was a teenager who would have been about Jamie Lee Curtis's age at that point. And she, you know, the long brown hair, similar kind of build type of thing. So maybe he just sees her as another version of his sister. Obviously, I know as we go into the later movies, the lore and all that kind of changes up a bit, and you know, all that kind of stuff. So there's a different reason why him and her are kind of intertwined, but at this point they don't go into any of that kind of stuff. So it's really just, I think you're left to assume, one, because she was the one who went to the house, and for me the other part is that I'm assuming it's some sort of striking resemblance to his sister.
Now I like that better than what they did later on. Right. I think that is a bit more scary, that he's just like, he's that deranged. He's kind of just gone, you look like her, and I need, and that's enough for me. It's just like flipped. Just something, when she approached, he probably, you know, there's no physical resemblance, but just enough that same age or whatever, he's just gone, boop, and that's it. And I like that more than what they did. And we might talk about that a little bit later. But I think this whole, the walkthrough, and then you have, you know, like we skipped and jumped a little bit, but when you have the main bit is them walking home, and then the first bit is like they're kind of taking the piss out of her for, like, they've got the boyfriends. What are you doing today? You're babysitting. Oh, I've kind of played a trick to my parents, and like that, you know, we're staying around the boys coming over. And then of course you see they kind of navigate. John Carpenter's point of view is, you see in the distance from a bush Michael, and then she looks up and then goes.
Just before that, actually, we get the scene of, while they're walking and talking, he comes driving down the street, and one of the girls turns around to cuss him out and say,
oh yes, slow down.
Right. Which I thought was funny, one, because mainly because I didn't think he was driving that fast. Nothing in the scene seemed like he was driving fast, and the rest of the movie he's never driving fast. He's just actually driving incredibly slow to stalk. So I thought it was a kind of a weird thing anyways, but
when there's no other car in the neighborhood,
right,
you yell at that car.
It seems a lot faster. So, she calls that out and he kind of stops in the street. They get a little nervous, like, oh shit, is he going to come back? And then obviously he does, and they move on. And then they see him in the bush later. And I'm assuming that's why he then kind of locks in on the other two girls, as we'll see later in the movie, was maybe just that interaction or what. But
yeah, they're walking with the attended victim,
right?
It's like that.
Yeah.
So,
but then we get to that scene, where he's kind of peeking to the bush and all that, and they're on there.
I think that's great. This is where I think they did clever with the character Michael Myers, because I think it's clever because when you see him straight away, he hardly moves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is great because it's just like I'm just standing there.
And
I'm
it's like
a
he
statue.
appears. I know they didn't do this, but it's like in the same shot he appeared and disappeared, but he didn't, because the camera turns back to the girls, and then when they turns back, he's not there. But like the first time you watch it, you're looking forward, and then you see him, and it's startling because he's there the whole time, but you're kind of looking at the bushes, and oh, there he is, and he's kind of maybe 3/4 of the way leaning out. He's not fully and I thought that's a scary shot. That is a very startling shot.
I will leave it to the end of reasons this is good and good bad, but I get like as visually, I think it's great because as audience, boom, you're like looking, gone. What just happened? Where is he gone? And then of course, like they walk up, and he's literally he disappears. And every time you see him later, he kind of does the same trick, I suppose, like that, like kind of with your mind. And it's great how John Carpenter, and I think you have to give a lot of ticks in his like wheelhouse for this, is how he plays on that. He knows what the audience is going to see, and like that will disturb them to go, oh, hold it, where's he gone? Or did I just see him? And there's some great scenes later, but I've like, even to like this is all this is doing is getting, it's supposed to creep you out. It's supposed to get you because you're in that neighborhood. You're not supposed to see this kind of person, and they're getting creeped out. And then of course it goes back. I think the next scene is she bumps into the policeman, doesn't she? And then it's like, so there's a local cop, and there might be something going on there. He doesn't really have a role in the. He's a bit of a buffoon, let's say that.
I was going to say bumpkin. I was going to say bumpkin affectionately.
But they bump in. She screams kind of a little bit, and then it's like, oh, we're all allowed one fright on Halloween or something like that. And then he goes away, and they go away, and it's like that. But that is introduced kind of. It's like they just purposely did segues, in the whole thing to next set up. That why is Donald Pleasence? I think he's calling him on the phone, and then it's a terrible scene. It's another one with Donald Pleasence. That's a terrible scene because he's on the phone, and he gets off the phone. I'm sure it's the cop saying, he's back. He's come home. He's going your way. And then he comes out, and then I'm guessing he saw the truck before or didn't. And then
sorry, go ahead.
And then he kind of walks to the truck, and then he picks up like what is obviously the patient uniform,
right?
Like the white top and trousers, because now that makes sense why he's wearing I suppose a mechanic's uniform.
Yeah,
I think it
was a mechanic's truck or something.
Yeah, so he jumps. Yeah, and then of course, then he just goes out, and then he just like, instead of investigating the area, he runs off.
There's a body on the bush over there on the haystack.
And the body on the bush is like what from him is like 3 meters away or whatever it is. It's like, oh, come on.
And like you said, this scene just feels so much like they're doing things to try to get from different plot points to keep it moving along. Because I can understand you given the time, obviously no cell phones, you pull over to use a phone, you're tracking it down. What are the odds that you use a phone that's directly near where this whole scene, this truck, this murder scene
just happens to be a phone?
And also, I guess because if you look at the scene, his car's parked behind him as his back's to his car, and the whole scene is in front of him where the phone is. So you could make the assumption that, okay, so he came up, he parked on that side, got out, used the phone. So at this point, he hasn't seen anything. But then all of a sudden, as soon as he's hanging up the phone, he happens to notice, oh, there's a scene to investigate over here. Let me walk over. Like,
But
it just felt so forced in terms of like, we got to get all these parts together to get it moving along.
But we missed the one scene, and this is why Donald Pleasant scenes. I can see why he was pissed off whilst he made, because there's another scene I forgot about, is when he goes to, like, I'm guessing it's like the hospital directors, and he's in like outside the building. And he's they're kind
yes,
and his argument is like, oh, he's just gone, don't worry about it, you know, we'll find him. It's like, no, he's a mass like psycho. And he goes, well, how did he get away? Well, I'm guessing one of your guys showed him how to drive. And he's just like, oh yeah, because we know in our head he was whatever, like a 7 or whatever age, and now 15 years later, yeah, so one of that, and it's just, again, it's just a scene like less than 2 minutes long that is just there to explain to the audience, that's how we got there, because one of the nurses or whoever, doctors, taught a psychopath to drive.
Right. And even like the little matchbook that's like, you know, you see it as you're watching that initial scene of him and the nurse in the car driving towards the asylum or whatever we want to call it. They do this weird little close-up on the matchbook that she's using to light her matches. Then you find this scene with the phone and the truck and the mechanic's uniform and all that. And you like, okay, so he sees the patient's clothes. He sees the trucks pulled over. The door's still left open. Had he walked a few steps further, he would have seen the body too, which is what any logical person probably would have done, but we'll ignore that for now. But he's already seen these robes. I mean, these, we call them Johnnies here. I don't know if it's the same term for you guys, but the medical robes, we call them Johnnies, whatever you want to call them. He sees
Johnny's in England are something completely different.
Yeah, very different. So here we call those medical, the gowns, the hospital gowns, we call them Johnnies, or maybe that's just
they are medically, I suppose they are. Johnny's are medical. You know what Johnny is?
No, in England, no idea.
Now he's gonna know.
You're gonna know. It's a condom.
Oh, I thought it was Jimmy's feet. Oh no, we call them Jimmy's here too. That's an old term here. A buddy of mine just said it in a group chat that he was making a joke.
Yeah, Johnny. We call them Johnnies. Yeah,
that's right. Johnnies. That's right. You guys do call them Johnnies.
Still
in the realm of medical stuff, I guess. But hey, it covers you to a degree. They both cover you, one more than the other. But fair enough.
Let's say both kind of medical.
He's going through this whole scene and like, oh, it's the matchbook that made him realize it's Mike. It's like, I think the patient gowns and the truck pulled over, like,
yeah.
But it's like, oh no, that special matchbook. That's what it just felt so forced and so like, man, they really needed. They it's almost like they wrote the plot points and then tried to go back later to say, all right, how the hell do we connect these things, and just rush the way to connect them.
Honestly,
it was. Sorry,
I would have never questioned the driving of the car. I just wouldn't have. Like, I think it's more clunky to explain it than...
I would agree, Sandy.
Yeah,
now
just
that you
let it be. Yeah, he's an adult and somehow he learned how to drive. I wouldn't have questioned it.
Maybe as a kid he's seen enough of it. I mean, most people, you put a kid in a go-kart, they can figure it out. 2 pedals, steering wheel. So it's not. We don't know that he's abiding by every single rule of the road. Right. We just know that he's driving. Simple enough. 1 foot here says go, 1 foot here says brake. You steer the thing. It's the traffic laws that you have to learn that are the complicated part of driving. So you could have just assumed, he sat in the car, put his foot down, thing moved, and here we are.
But they made a point as well.
Right. It did make it a little clunkier.
It's like it's 150 miles away. How did he get there? Didn't they? Because one of you showed him how to drive or whatever.
Well, I guess that's the other plot hole too. Is how the hell would he know the way back? It is 150 miles away.
Exactly.
That's probably the bigger
one. Sign that says go this way every 5 minutes. Back then, there's no GPS. You did need a map, but
it's as a whole. Now that we're kind of peeling the layers of the onions, it is a very clunky scenario that gets him back to his hometown.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I said earlier. They had that scene. They didn't care about that. They just wanted that the fun bit. What we're going to probably get up to is like that everybody remembers. Yeah. But so what we got? So we've jumped. Where we left off?
I think we were at the when he discovers the truck, the medical clothes.
Yeah. Oh no. We've just seen the cop, haven't we? Because we jumped over that.
Oh yes, that's right.
Cop.
Right.
So now. So we've had that, and we've had the cop, Donald Pleasance, gone that, and then Donald Pleasant runs off, and then kind of then is it now? It kind of just goes into Halloween kind of night. Is now we get out to
so we go the girls. I think at this point are leaving school again.
Yeah. Oh no,
then they
you
end
get
up
the
in the girl's car.
Sorry, no, you get the interaction with Tommy, the bullies.
That's right. That's right. And Michael Myers is standing.
Yeah. So yeah, I like this scene because it's kind of subtle. So it probably, it's. But of course, you would have probably another like 50 kids in the background all running with running around. So you have a couple of kids run out, and then you have Tommy who's got this massive pumpkin, and I do like this scene because it sets it up. Is the boogeyman's gonna get you? The boogeyman's gonna get you, and then Tommy, of course, is I'm guessing a couple of years lower than these kids. They're trying to scare him. It's like the boogeyman's gonna get you tonight, and he's like dismissing it, and like it haunts him later on in the movie. And then of course he gets kind of like a little bit scared. They trip him over, and he breaks his pumpkin. And I felt sorry. I was like, oh, sorry. I feel a bit sorry. But one of the kids who's bullying, runs out in front of him, turns right straight into Michael Myers. And I like this because Michael Myers, the kid is blatantly terrified, and it's lucky it's Halloween because I'm guessing any other day he's gonna call the police or something like that.
Right, like why is this guy in a mask?
Why is this guy in a mask? But I kind of got this scene as well because he doesn't do anything with the kid. He kind of just lets him go. He kind of push, doesn't push him. He just stops him, like very gently. He doesn't really like grab him, pushes him away. They look at each other, and I think that is supposed to lead up that he's still got the mind of a kid. He's still in, he still believes kind of, like that kids are innocent.
Yeah, it's almost like it's still his soft spot.
He's
there's still a shred of the last shred of humanity that might be inside of him is I'm not going to hurt kids.
Exactly. Yeah,
which I do think is interesting because it does most likely probably tie to, because by all accounts you have to assume up to the point of that first scene, Michael Myers was a normal kid. So whatever the hell snaps inside of his mind that brings him into the Michael Myers that becomes, the Michael Myers, you have to imagine that or at least I think the movie wants you to imagine that there is still that shred of who he was before is still in there somewhere, even if it's buried down incredibly deep under these inner demons, it's still there. And that's the little sign of it poking out is that he doesn't harm kids.
Yeah. But you get that. Yeah. So now he's seen Tommy already because he's seen her with, I can't remember what is Jamie Lee's character called? Laura or Laurie. So he knows that's the same kid. So he kind of like, that's the kid I'm going to see where he lives. So like, that's why I kind of got this also for that. He kind of like he knows where they are, where the neighborhood is, because she's not going back home. She's babysitting. That's the kid.
And again, I was just going to say, but how does he know this kid has any relation to Laurie? And it's got to be that scene where she walks up to the door and she sees the kid with the door. That's got to be the main point of what kind of gets his whole plan, I guess, formulated at that point. But yeah, no, I did like this scene. I thought maybe the kid who runs away could have acted a little bit more into like at least a scream or a kind of a startling something. He kind of just like walks in, he grabs him and runs away. Which I could buy, to be honest with you. A kid might just kind of stay quiet and just book it in the next direction. Not everybody's going to scream and shout every time. So I could buy that.
That's the same because it's Halloween,
right? So like, it could slide a little bit. Just like, I'm just going to get out of here. I'm not going to.
It just goes a little bit startled and then just
books it in the other direction.
Yeah.
But what I liked about it is the boogeyman stuff, because this is, and I think this has to do a little bit with that Bush scene as well, where they're almost making it seem like he can appear and vanish. They want to set the idea that Michael Myers is more than just a serial killer or more than human, that he is something else. And, the overlying theme, I think it's even on the poster that we showed earlier. There's just something about that you can't kill the boogeyman. So they do want to give more of a kind of inhuman aspect to Michael Myers' character, which I do think is done fairly well throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But
they
do
hammer
home the boogeyman thing.
Well, they do this and when I think we can jump in, like when the Halloween night is, you've got the babysitters. You kind of got one, like Laurie is doing Tommy, and the other girl is doing, I can't remember now, sorry, the other girl. So they're like, they're two separate houses, kind of that. But Tommy is asking the question already, what is the boogeyman? Well, who is the boogeyman? You know, like that. She's like, there's nothing called that. You know, like the boogeyman. And every time, you know, he, like, there's like scenes like he's looking out the window, isn't he? And he's like, I've seen the boogeyman. And then she looks, maybe he's there. And it's kind of like that. Like she kind of innocently kind of thing, like, you know, the kid's a little bit like playing up. He's watched the movie, probably had too many candies, a little bit sugar high. Somebody said something to him, and he's a little bit kind of scared of this fictional boogeyman. But like, like nobody realizes, well, the boogeyman could be real. And I like how they play into that. It's quite clever. It's like that. Yeah, we're gonna drop in, but we're gonna use the kid to tell you about the boogeyman. Like the kids can see the boogeyman
from their perspective.
Yeah,
because they don't know they don't know Michael Myers. They don't know who he is. So from everyone's perspective who starts to see glimpses of him, he is the boogeyman, because they don't know that this is a real person. They don't know that this is Michael Myers. And the other aspect of the boogeyman, you know, you can't kill the boogeyman because the boogeyman comes from your own imagination, right? It's a similar to in Harry Potter, the Boggart, you know, who is your worst fear from your mind that becomes embodied. That's what the boogeyman is. It's your worst fear, but it's also your penalty, your retribution for things that you've done wrong. And this is where there's a morality tale here, because, you know, the ultimate targets of his murders are, you know, young girls who are doing a very bad thing. And that's where the morality of the boogeyman comes in. It's because they're doing this bad thing. And that's why, you know, ultimately, you know, they're attacked. Then the question is, well, why is he going after Laurie? And it's almost a foregone conclusion if you're thinking that way. Well, she's going to be that archetypal last victim who is going to survive at the end, because she didn't do anything wrong, at least in this film, because she's not like her friends, at least in this film. Who knows what else she's done. But the reaction of the kids, it's the verbalization of what the young women should be thinking, that, hey, there's this boogeyman out there. There's this thing out there. We don't know that it's Michael Myers. We don't know what it is, but there is this thing. They don't know it yet because they haven't experienced it. But now Tommy has seen it.
And there's, you know, even at this point, even now I'm forgetting her name, Laurie, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, she's seen him a few times, and her friends are kind of pushing back on, like, you're not seeing anything. It's probably Old Man Jenkins or whatever his name is who lives next door. Like, even they're kind of pushing back on it, like, you're out of your mind. You know, don't worry about the boogeyman. Don't worry about, well, she never says boogeyman, at least not to that point. But they're essentially just kind of brushing her off, like, you're not seeing anything. There's nobody there. It's just a car. Like, you know, they're undermining what she's seeing as well.
It's all in your mind.
Right. And they're just focused on, you know, high school, the high school life, the boys hooking up, all that kind of stuff. Like, they just can't be bothered with it, where she's the character who doesn't do all that. So maybe she's a little bit more observant, or a little bit more, I don't know if I want to say willing, you know, because not so much willing to believe in the boogeyman, but they're more oblivious, where she's kind of more in tune with, like, what's going on around her, because she realized she's less of in their world. Their lives are like most high school kids. Their lives are everything. They're the center of the universe. You know, I'm worried about this next school dance and this, that, the other. I'm not worried about the happenings of a little town. Whereas because she's a little bit more nerdy, she's not as self-centered, I guess is probably the way to put it. So she's got her eyes open a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, you can see that by they have a great, I suppose, freeway now and lane calls of through the houses. They have that before it hits the fan, and anybody who's young, dial phone.
Yeah. I came up just on the end of dial. I think each of my grandmothers had dial phones. They were the only two I've
I
ever
used to
seen in my
love a
life.
dial phone.
They were fun. We used to play with them as kids.
So they have kind of I can't remember the name, the brunette who is
Annie, I think. Anne or Annie.
yeah, Annie, is it? She's babysitting the girl, and then she phones up, and they have a little bit of interaction, and they kind of have a bit of like they have a phone calls, and the blonde who's got the boyfriend over. She's the one who's kind of manipulated the parents to get like a free house. They're kind of doing their thing, but they have like this kind of triangle picking up the phone and talking to each other. And then, of course, the young girl, is literally watching old, and we spoke this just before this, is old black and white horror movie, and she's fixated onto this like horror movie. Like even the Annie is do this, like, do you want this? And she's literally doesn't talk. She can't hear a thing. She's literally, I guess in that age, I'm guessing most of this, you watch those movies that you immerse yourself in, even when they were like, they're scary, you know, like that. So I like that. And then, of course, they see it, you see from, I suppose, the reverse angle. Like she's in the kitchen, and then you see Michael like go past the patios, and then she drops something on herself. Like I can't remember what she said it was now.
Butter. I think she was making popcorn for the girl.
Yeah, butter. Yeah, that's it. So she instantly. What I always found a weird thing. She must have covered herself a lot in butter.
Yeah, I thought
because she literally just takes it off and literally strips down. You know, back off. And I think that's like, again, that is another trigger point for Michael,
right?
Because that is literally she ends up just being in her pants. So it's kind of like trigger. That's what you saw at the start of the movie. It's another trigger point for him. So then she goes off into I suppose like a laundry outhouse.
Yeah, I've never seen much of that, but apparently it's like a little shed in the back of the house.
Yeah, a little shed about. And then there's I'm guessing, because the girl shows you, there's a latch that you've got to pull so you don't lock yourself in. And I found this scene a bit strange. So her instant reaction is to climb out of a window, but there's an obstacle in the way, and not move the obstacle, and then she gets stuck. She gets stuck. And then you kind of got in your mindset, Michael's going to get you, you know, so like that. And then, of course, then is it? I can't remember who phones to kind of get her. I can't remember.
So she's stuck in the window, and her boyfriend, is it Paul? Is that the one she's calling? One of the guys. I think the guy who's with the blonde is named Bob. So the girl the guy she's calling is Paul. Paul's calling her because he knows she's babysitting there. And that's when she yells to the house for the little girl, Lindsay, like, can you answer the phone? It's Paul. I'm stuck, blah, blah, blah. And then I think at that point, that's when Paul says, "Oh, can you get her for me? I want to talk to her." And then she finally goes out to help her get out of there.
Yeah, help her,
So in this scene,
don't tell her what happened. Don't tell her what happened. Yeah.
So this scene to me starts a bit of the kind of cheesy, nonsensical horror things that are meant to kind of create scenes that are supposed to be tension. And you nailed it. It was the not moving that rack to get out of the window. It was almost like they needed, how's she going to get stuck in a window? I know how she'll get stuck in a window. There'll be something there that keeps her from opening it. She gets like,
made no sense.
Yeah, it just it to me, it starts the beginning of, from this point forth, there's a lot of stuff going on in the house, and we'll talk about it as we go, but there's just things that are like, okay, so you did that in order to try to create some more tension, to make you think this was the spot where Michael was going to get her. Just kind of a logical, regular functions of humans within inside of a house that don't make a ton of sense unless they're there to try to create this tension or create this kind of false kind of thing where it's like, oh, this is going to be it. This is where she's going to get him in the window. And then she doesn't. So then you kind of think, oh, maybe she doesn't get caught until she, does it. It just tries to create tension in a way that feels very cheesy to me and very forced.
Yeah, because he says, can you come over? So then she says, can you look after the kid? And then she goes, you can go over and watch some TV or something with Tommy. And she gets all excited, and they go off, and then they agree. And then she goes to get to the car. It's locked. And then she goes back Oh, he's locked. Gets pissed off, and then goes back into the house for the keys. Goes back into the garage, and just instantly opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
Gets into the car, and then there's that, I suppose, split second of realism. Oh, this was locked,
Right.
and then of course it's the first murder.
Right.
And this is good because it, like, he just literally, you can see the power of him straight away because he just literally one-handed,
Yep.
one-handed around the throat from the back. You can see she's struggling. There's not much, like, he's not putting effort in. He's just literally done.
Right.
I'm not moving at all. So I think that sets it up quite well. That there's, like, as you say, he is the embodiment of the boogeyman. He's supposed to be unwelded. Like a lot of people be able to get that hand off because he's not putting two around there. And then they there's the struggle, of course, and like she kicks and like terrible bit of deaf acting, I suppose you want to call it.
Oh, that was so over the top. Yeah.
And then I can't and then
it was to me over the top in the kind of struggle of losing the air and all that. But underdone in terms of, like, you're not even taking a swing at him. You're not even trying to scratch his face. You're just kind of like letting it happen, but also overselling the strangulation side of it. It just felt very funny, like silly, to be honest. When I watched him, like, this comes off as a bit silly.
It has to be, the otherworldly part, because even in the very, very first murder, when Michael's a child, okay, I don't know what's the age difference, 7, 8 years
at least.
She
looked like she was
got
16,
a knife.
17. Well, she honestly looked like she was 20, but I'm assuming they're going for like that middle couple of years of high school, so sophomore, junior year, maybe type of high school age.
Even though he's got a knife, she could have kicked him, done something.
Just anything, just kind of lets it happen.
Just lets it happen. It's just
this one is just like, look, for example, at No Country for Old Men, that first initial strangulation scene with Javier Bardem's character and the cop.
Guy
It's a perfect example of, he can only do so much to fight back because he's in an awful position to try to, but at least the body flip, everything seems like he's at least trying to fight to get out of it, or fighting to save his life, or at least to just get some tension off his throat. Whereas this one was more just like, oh, this is it. I guess I'm done.
Okay. Now, while this is happening, though, our friend Dr. Loomis is with the police officer. Mm-hmm. Actually, I think he's the father of the girl who just got strangled, right?
Yes, yep.
So they're at the house talking. I think Pleasence is convincing the police officer that, number one, that Michael Myers is a danger. Number two, that he's going to be at this house and he needs to be here because now this again, I need to talk to him, but you've just explained how over the course of 15 years, you've never been able to get a word out of him. You've never seen behind those eyes. There's not a human in there. What are you trying to do now? Oh, you got to call for backup, man. Just call for backup. You don't need to be in there trying to talk. Talk to him because he's coming back.
But we also missed that. Sorry, just like we missed that scene. We also missed another scene at the graveyard.
Oh my gosh, the graveyard. So.
Oh right, yeah, we did miss
that. They go to the grave again. Okay, so why? Why did they need to go to? They weren't going to dig up.
But the grave was there for the line of he's come. He's come home.
Right, but there's
home.
No need for this doctor to be at the graveyard.
No,
there's nothing to see a headstone of someone that he murdered.
What would you gain from that?
No data you're going to get from that except, oh my goodness, these blasted kids. They take these things on Halloween and then he starts counting. Oh, plot C, D, E, F, G. Oh, this is hers. This would have been Judith Myers. And it's taken Judith Myers.
It's another one of those scenes that we want to try to create this creepy element, this tension, but when you're watching it, I had the same reaction. Like, why is Dr. Loomis even he knows quite literally more about Michael Myers than probably anybody on earth at this point. What is he going to gain from just visiting the gravesite of his sister? How would he have, okay, so I guess what the scene wants you to believe is he went there, saw that it was missing, and that was his confirmation that Michael Myers was home. But like, again, at this point, why would you even think, okay, well, I'll go check the gravesite to see if the gravestone's there or not, because
Just
that's going to be
not
my
logical at
indication to
all.
know that he's home, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to use that as your confirmation piece of whether or not he's home. It doesn't make sense.
But that's it. Then that goes on to that scene. Is
Yeah.
his next idea is like he must go home.
Right.
He must be home. And then he even when he gets there, he's like he's been here.
The
Right.
stove
How
is
do you know that?
warm or
How do you
something.
know that? How do you know he's been here? It's just
Well,
like
there's a
it's
dead
all locked
animal
up.
here, and it's
Just
like, well, it's an abandoned house. You could see,
yeah.
you know, there's a lot of
he's
reasons
been here.
a dead
Yeah.
animal could
I
be
don't get that. Did they mean he's like killed the
He's
animal?
eaten it.
I think
Eating it,
that's
or
what they
something? Yeah.
reference.
Yeah.
He said it. He got hungry. Oh, it's
Yeah,
still
oh.
warm. Lou.
Yeah, and it was just like to kind of use those two spots, so the house and the graveyard, well, it's actually graveyard then house, to use those as like a double confirmation just seemed, one, unnecessary, and two, silly with the idea of the graveyard as a whole. You could have just went to the house and have him do the same. You could have just removed the graveyard scene and had the house scene be the only one as his confirmation, and it would have worked all the same, and you would have gotten rid of a silly scene on top of it.
Yeah, because I think I can't remember if it's like after the car scene they go back, and I think like with Loomis, he's still looking at the house. There's been a death, and I can't remember if roughly now is like there is one of the funniest scenes. It's where there's three kids, and they double I dare you to go up to the house.
Yep.
And they call, I can't remember, like let's say like can't remember, like Terry or something.
I think it's the kids who were bullying
I think
Tommy in the other scenes.
Yeah.
I remember one of the names being similar. Plus, I think it's safe for us to assume it is, because there's not a whole lot of cast members. To have
There's not a lot of kids in this town. There's no people.
But they say I think
it's
it's Terry, or
it's something like that.
It's something like that. And then he goes up, and then he climbs up a step, and then Loomis just like literally, he does it to protect them. And also to scare the living shit out of them.
He gets a little kick out of doing
Get away, turns, or something like that. And they like bolt, and I love that bit. And then there's that kind of grin on his face.
Yeah, he gets a kick out of it.
Like, he gets a kick out. Like, I just scared the living shit out of these three kids. And I do like that scene. I think it's quite amusing. And then of course, then you go back to the dark straight away of like of what's actually happening, because I think. Like Tommy's dressed up as I'm guessing an astronaut, isn't he? And they're watching the TV together, and he goes to scare the girl who I think they're watching. I'm guessing it's an old Buck Rogers of Flash Gordon. I can't remember which like.
I remember at one time we see. I thought maybe it was a different movie. I've watched a couple this week, so now I'm kind of blending the two. But I want to say The Thing pops up as a on screen for one of them. But there was one that seemed more sci-fi based. I remember seeing like maybe an alien UFO in the air, so it could have been.
Yeah, that's where
been two different parts.
He jumps off and he hides behind the curtain, doesn't he? And like trying to scare her, and like he says something. I can't remember what he says. And then he looks. He can see out the window, and then of course he can see. Well, he doesn't know. He thinks it's the boogeyman, Michael, just carrying Annie's body from around the house. Is like that, and then of course he just goes into freak out mode of like as any kid that age would do, screaming, "I've seen the boogeyman!" And Wassling comes over and kind of like, what's going on? I think she's making cupcakes or whatever.
I think she's doing because I think she's still working on the pumpkin while the kids went back to the movie at that point.
Yeah, so it's quite good. Tomby, 5 gifted members.
Breaking news.
Thank you, man. Who got it? Ron. Just Ron. Okay. Jay Tapier. Got it.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yeah, we got another membership from Tomby.
I'm making out like a piano these last few streams.
As we know who that is. Taz and Natty McBatty. There you go. So he's got one as well. So that's great. Thank you very much.
Penile rice. Is that Highlander? Is that from
Mr. Highlander? We believe.
My God.
He's kept it quiet, and we believe it is. That is he's
been too quiet about it, I think.
We've believed that is he's one when he is absolutely nailing Mr. Porkchop for mispronouncing pilau rice. So yeah, it's penile. So that's it. But yeah, so they do that. He's freaking out. The girl kind of starts getting a bit upset, so she intervenes and then kind of like a bit aggressive, but like verbally, it's like you're freaking out. What's her face? But so can you calm it down? Yeah, Lindsay, like that, and then she kind of backs. But I've seen the boogeyman. You know, like he's doing that kind of thing, like innocent, like kid. And then is it then the phone rings and then it's her friend, the blonde one, that kind of cuts it off?
If it's not directly after, it's right in the same vicinity.
Yeah.
Because she pulls up to, what is it? No, I think she might call from wherever her and her boyfriend are. And they kind of have this conversation about like, oh, where's Annie? Blah, blah, blah. We're going to that house. So they end up going to the house that Annie was babysitting at. And they're waiting for Paul and Annie to arrive, where then they kind of just, they're doing a little bit of drinking. They're planning on doing their little hookup thing. So they just bust right into the house. And at that point, they realize Annie's still not there. So I think then they call, I was going to say Laurie again to try to ask if she knows where Annie is and all that. And they just,
because I'm guessing that Annie's supposed to have picked up.
Right. Paul and have already been back by then.
Yeah.
Right. Because you got to assume small town. It's not very far. So she should have already been back by now. And obviously,
she's the only one with a car. She's the only one with the only car in the whole town.
Yeah,
and it's her dad.
Her, Michael, and the guy that the blonde girl's with his van. The only 3 vehicles we see.
Yeah, so they start kind of fooling around. They go upstairs. A very quick sex scene. Another very, very quick sex scene. And then they have a bit of a joke around after he finishes very, very quickly. About go and get me
me a beer.
Go get me a beer. I'll go and get you. She says, I fancy a beer. And then he's like, me too. And then she goes, well, you go and get me one. And then he's joking. He plods off downstairs to go and get a beer. And I think this is one of Jay's. I'm going to have to bring it up. I'm going to have to bring up the photo.
Yeah, this is... So there's a couple silly things about this one.
But end bit, this happens.
Oh my God. Yeah. So the
dude also keeps his glasses on when he's fooling around with his girlfriend. I just want to point that
out. So the first thing that this goes again with like the window and the thing in the window that she doesn't move and she gets herself purposely stuck almost. This is another case of, okay, so I've lived in my house for quite a few years now. I could navigate this house with my eyes closed if I had to. But you know what I do every time I navigate this house at night? I still turn the lights on because there's no reason for me to do it in the dark. There's no reason I could do this. I could go from any floor of this house with my eyes closed backwards if I had to, sure. But I wouldn't. I'd turn the lights on and I'd navigate the house. Nobody in this movie, in terms of these teenagers, uses a light switch, and it blows my mind. So this guy's going through this house who I have to presume he's never been in, or maybe Annie's a regular babysitter and they've had friends over a few times while babysitting. So maybe he's been there once or twice, but he navigates this entire house in the dark for some reason to go get a beer. And it blows my mind in terms of the logic behind it, because you know that the reason they did it needs to be dark, needs to be suspenseful. People are afraid of the dark. Let's keep the house dark this whole time. And it just makes no sense. He would obviously turn the light. Not that it would stop Michael. Whether Michael's there or not, he's going to attack you in the light. The dark doesn't matter. But the idea that they're just navigating this house in the dark all the time was like, it was almost driving me nuts. Like, for the love of God, somebody flick a light switch, please.
Turn the light on.
But then we get this. So then Michael attacks him. And, I actually liked again, because it sets up this idea that Michael's more than human. He's not, he's not just a serial killer. He's incredibly strong. He lifts this guy up, chokes him up with one hand.
One-handed again.
Again, I'd argue the guy's not fighting back properly. Not a single swing at the face or anything. Right, nothing. He's just kind of letting it happen.
I suppose he's supposed to say like how big Michael is, because he does it at a reach. Everything's at a reach.
Right. So fair enough. But again, you would even expect some kind of kicking, something to try, right? Like something. And it's just kind of letting it happen. And but again, I'm still at this point, I'm okay with it. I think the choking scene is interesting in terms of how it sets up this inhuman strength of Michael as well. Because we're talking about, granted, probably consider this kid to be 17, 18 years old, but at that point, generally speaking, a fully grown adult. 18-year-olds are in high school are typically, honestly, in some of the best shape a lot of people will ever be in if they're doing sports and things like that. So you got to figure he's a kid of decent build and all that. So to see Michael now take out a male character instead of female, now you're kind of like, oh crap, no, this guy is strong. He's lifting up a grown man by one hand, choking him out. It's all good. And then he does this stab with the knife that's not all that strong. Like, it's not a very forceful stab, if you know what I mean. Like, it's kind of just like, well, I'm just going to place this in you really quick. And it's supposed to be enough to have basically worked as a stake to pin him to this wall. There's so much wrong with it that I just kind of honestly found myself chuckling. I'm like, one, a knife is never, very few things you're going to put through him are going to be able to pin him to the wall like that. But
how long is that knife?
Yeah, like that one. How long is the knife? Because that's got to go, because there's a lot of it still sticking out. You got like a good inch and a half sticking out here of blade, then the handle. So how long is the knife? Great question. Seemingly impossibly long. Yeah. How deep did it get into the wood doesn't make sense. It wouldn't.
I think what you're supposed to look at is Michael's reaction to it,
right? Almost like a curiosity of like,
it is because he's like,
do that.
Yeah, that's a bit odd, and he's still like a lost dog does. That kind of just put the head to the side.
Interesting.
And he's doing that, and he's just like, that's it. That's a bit bizarre. And I think they I don't know if they shot it once and went, that doesn't look right, and like, because one, he would droop down.
Yep.
And
the
then
body's
kind of like, and he's like, well, hold it. Yeah. And I'm guessing that's the curiosity. It's like, they did it as well. He's not fallen down. Can you look at it like, oh, that's a bit odd, as a psycho like would? And I like Michael's reaction to it is great, but the logic is stupid.
Even a psycho can obey the laws of physics. Obviously.
I've seen some weird deaths in my time, and this is bizarre. And it's all right, but I do like, from on to this, it's very good. The play, the next bit, because I don't know why he thought Ghost and take his glasses.
Oh my god! I legitimately burst out laughing because I totally forgot.
And they're crooked.
Yeah,
the crooked glasses. And her reaction is kind of silly, goofy too.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
I'm guessing they're supposed to play that she's a bit the blonde dumb.
Yeah, a little
she's supposed to be the iconic because all she does is she's
been drinking. So
yeah, I'm gonna get the tits out.
Well, I mean, it is an 80s, well, I guess late 70s, but it's an 80s slasher. So without bobs and slashing, it's not much. But no, it's
the
like
nipple. That's it.
It's like Stacy. Jesus, I did it again.
Yeah, we have to do it have to do it every time.
Like Sandy was just saying, though, her reaction's very silly. So the door opens, you see him in the first thing I thought of was actually Beetlejuice when they put the sheets on and they try to scare Delia.
Oh yeah,
it's so silly.
They probably nicked it from this,
yeah, honestly, and because it would have been not too long after. But the idea that he just puts a sheet on and then the glasses, like, it just seems so out of character. Like, at what point in any other part of this movie has he tried to disguise himself to look like anyone else? It just seemed so bizarre. Granted, there's no other real male characters in the movie, so I don't know. Maybe there was something with the idea of, he killed his sister while she was on her own, killed Annie while he was on her own. Maybe this was his way of sneaking in. I don't know. I can't make much logic as to why he put the sheet and the glasses on. It made no sense to me. It just looked so silly when he opens the door. I legitimately burst out chuckling, like, I totally forgot that they did that in this.
Yeah.
Only because the only thing I'm thinking there is maybe because when he opens, like when he's snuck from behind with the person in the car right there, he immediately had surprise on her. When he ambushed this guy, he had surprise, maybe thinking, okay, I open this door, I don't have immediate surprise, so I don't know, I've got to get in. And when he was a little boy walking into his sister's room, he had a mask on. I don't know, and a costume. So who knows? Yeah, is it supposed
And
to be extra scary? It's kind of more on the goofy side
yeah,
than
see, and
the
that's how
extra
I took
scary
it.
bit.
Mhm.
Mm.
And I even thought, Sandy, that might have been it, maybe because he loses a little bit of the element of surprise from coming straight on, like straight forward towards her. But again, I mean, how much surprise are you really going to hold sitting there with this sheet on and just not saying it? Like, eventually she's going to be like, oh, a little freaked out, all that. But then you see later on with Laurie, he's not as concerned about the surprise factor. That's more of like kind of coming at you head on. Well, he does, I guess, initially surprise her, but after she starts, it's a full on chase. She knows he's coming for it. Like, I thought at first maybe his thing was he wanted to kind of surprise them, but then the way he gives up surprise for Laurie and just straight on attacks her and chases her, it made it feel like that made even less sense with the whole sheet and the glasses and the from behind attack there. I don't know. I couldn't make much sense of that one.
Well, but saying that, there is, like, once this happens, when he gets into home, there is a great scene, like when Laurie kind of gets into the house and goes upstairs and then sees, I'm guessing it's this girl, the blonde girl, flayed out with a tombstone,
Mm-hmm.
and then she backs up like all scared, doesn't she? And then the body, what we had earlier, drops down, and then she moves into a different area, and it's black, and then his face just appears. But it's so subtle at the start, like you can just see it, like you can see it, like, but you don't know it. Like once you rewatch it, you know he's coming from that area, he's coming from there, and then he appears. And I think it's that it's a bit weird because when he first swings with the knife, that's an easy kill. She's got a back turned. It's an easy kill,
he
but
just
he
goes for the
completely
arm.
misses the arm.
Mhm.
And then that's where it gets into, like a cat chase, got a cat and mouse, isn't
Right.
it, really? But like, yeah, it's a different kill scenario after that moment. That is he pissed off? Are they trying to tell us that because he's missed, he's pissed off with himself?
Mhm.
And now it gets into this like kind of erratic chase of
Right, that's maybe out of his normal nature, normal process, things like that.
Yeah.
Almost like a sense of panic and frustration at the same time. Like, crap, I missed my opportunity.
Yeah.
And I'm pissed that I missed my opportunity thing. So
Yeah,
I can
because
see it and I can buy that, I think, and that's probably what they're going for. I have to at least imagine. So, and
because
like I
then
said,
she fall
Mhm.
like
No,
the
go ahead.
next bit, even when it goes into like he's got out of his, I suppose, comfort house, because she falls down the stairs, runs out to the next house, and then he's chasing, but he's out of his comfort. I
Yeah, it's
suppose
like
he's not fully in control, because he's
Right.
now left what my plan was, because he knows his plan is setting it all up most of the time. I know where I've got, like, the car scene. I know I've got to be downstairs. One of them's definitely going to come downstairs. He's got all these little like
even-
logical kind of evil mitigated plans that
Right.
shouldn't be right, and they're
he's
there for the
definitely
storyline. But
he's definitely a planner too, because you could almost take, and the first time I kind of processed it while I was watching yesterday, I was like, well, it's almost a little too coincidental that she walked into the room with the gravestone and all that, and the girl. Well, first of all, let's just not forget that. Again, this is a scenario of character walking into a completely unlit house and not even attempting to turn on a light. Don't understand why. Makes no sense. And you could at least, like, if they wanted it dark, all you had to do was have her flick a light and let us realize that, oh, he must have cut the power. Boom, done.
Yeah.
Makes more sense. But they don't even attempt to turn on the lights, which just drives me nuts the whole movie. But so she comes in, the house is dark, she's floating through it. And when you first kind of see how first she sees Annie with the headstone, freaks her out, bumps into the closet that opens up, and Bob swings down that we saw at the beginning of the stream. And then she backs up one more time and finds the blonde girl whose name I can't remember, and kind of stuffed in a cupboard. And all of that at first comes off as like, well, it's really coincidental that she went into each domino at a time. But then I started thinking about, like, you could look at that as he's spent the whole night in this house. He's planned it. He's gotten 3 kills off in this house, so he knows it. And right now he wants to set the trap. So she's almost like a, I guess domino is the perfect way to put it. I know I just used it, but that domino scenario of, okay, well, she's going to see this first. She's going to freak out, back up this way, because there's not many ways you're going to back out, hit this guy. And once she hits that guy, she's going to go, so I think it gives the idea that he's a planner. He's not just a psychopath doing, because he's very patient. He stalks his prey. He looked like, he kind of takes everything in, the environment, their nature, what they might do. So at first it came off as a bit cheesy and coincidental, but then I looked at it as like, okay, so this guy plans, he gets it. And that's why when he gets into the other house, much like you said, Stasis, it's kind of a free for all. I don't know this house. I don't know this territory. I just got to take this chick out because I can't have her be the one that gets away.
But even to the point, like you said, like he didn't cut the electrics, but when she first doesn't go to her own house. And I'm guessing there's supposed to be some point to, like she runs to like a neighbor's house. You would think like, well, they would know her. It's a small town.
Yeah.
And then
Or
she's
wouldn't
crying
she
for
run
help.
screaming down the street for anyone to come out of their
Yeah.
houses? Like there have to.
Right.
Why are there no humans in this neighborhood?
But
Where are all
that's
the
the
people?
same. But they turn on the light, open, look for. Do you see a glimpse of somebody
just
doing
close.
curtain ball, and then turn off the lights? No, not dealing with that. Now I can understand that if you're in a really dodgy area, you don't want to get involved. But
you're at
like in
least
this
calling
kind
the
of like,
police.
it's a very like friendly neighborhood. Everybody's gonna know each other, and then they go, nope, not having that tonight.
Right.
It's Halloween.
And exactly. I was just gonna say I'll give him a sliver of benefit of the doubt that it's Halloween. Maybe they assume it's a prank. But if anybody's screaming bloody murder like that, knocking on my door and all that, unfortunately today we live in a world where you just can't open your front door for anybody. You kind of have to assess the situation. So I get that side of it, and seems like even then that was a little bit of what they were going for. But you would at least maybe call the cops and say there's a screaming crazy person on my front steps. Even if you might not know that that's actually a person in need, but the cops would be in the area because you're calling them to get that side of things situated. So that was kind of like, so she's not a single house on that street. He has a person screaming bloody murder and for help and is doing anything about it. And that's where the emptiness of the town kind of comes back to be like, oof, they kind of overlooked that a little bit.
Yeah. But then when she gets to Tommy's house, she goes in and instantly, like after she had to throw like a pot because they're in bed, and he comes down like really dozy, opens the door, and then
no, she's screaming, "Open the door! Open the door!"
Yeah. But you see Michael slowly approaching. He's not making an effort, creeping up. But the time she gets in, closes the door, locks it, gets to the phone. He's already cut the wire for the phones,
but only the phone wire.
Oh, the electric,
it's the only wire he's cut all night.
The only wire. So
only in this house too, because as he's killed Annie and all these people in the other house, never cut the lines once. But for some reason, he decided, and that's where the planning almost loses me, because it's like, did he cut this line? Well, no, because she was calling back and forth. So I guess you have to imagine in that run over and waiting for Tommy to unlock the door. When she finally gets in, he just immediately goes to the phone line, which again just doesn't really make sense. He didn't do that in any other scenario.
The horror film logic that becomes apparent here. This is where it just loses me. Right? You barricade yourself in a house where he knows you. Like, instead of again continuing to run amok and run around and run away and grab a kid and go somewhere. Nope. Everybody lock yourselves in your rooms, and I'm going to lock myself in a little tiny teeny closet. I could have ripped those doors off that closet, by the way.
I'm so glad you said that. I thought the same thing.
Michael Myers, who is strong enough to pick up a 200-pound guy with one hand,
right, and somehow stake him to a wall with a butcher knife.
Closet doors, which I have accidentally pulled off the track.
Yes, yep. I've hit it too hard vacuuming before and knocked one off of its hinge. It's like, that stood out to me too. I'm like, of all types of closet doors, you guys picked the weakest one in human existence to be the most difficult door for him to get through.
But even to that, they set it up like it's really terrible. So she's locked up. She's done the phone call, and how's he in the house? Because we see the curtain blow, and there was a left open window. We guess. It's like that because there wasn't a smash, there wasn't a break in.
Right.
Like, she was in that vicinity, so she runs up, tells the kids, as you say, barricade yourself in. And then, of course, while she's telling that, he's literally standing behind them, of like, hello, and he's like, "I'm the boogeyman."
Even the getting into the house. Now that I'm trying to play it back in my mind here, so she gets in the house. the kids are downstairs because Tommy's right at the front door.
Yeah.
with her.
Oh, yeah.
So doesn't she give the like she tells them at that point, go upstairs, lock yourselves in.
Lock the
But
door.
then doesn't she go into the living room because she sits at the couch? Because when he gets her, she stabs him in the eye with something. I forget what it is, or in the neck.
That's later. That is later.
Is that later? Okay, because I was going to say
that is in these things.
If she's standing down there, at what point does he come through that window?
Yeah, because she sees. We see it. I don't know if that she sees it, but she sits down, and then he comes over the sofa,
right?
Doesn't he? And like goes that again, misses.
Yeah, over the back.
Like you're like, oh, like everybody else don't miss, but he completely misses, and then there's like a like. Is this where she managed to get him to drop the knife? Is this the point?
So yes, so she stabs him in the neck with a knitting
needle. That's it. Yeah.
She's got her whole pouch there.
Yeah.
So she uses the knitting needle, stabs him in the neck, and I think he drops the knife at that point.
Oh,
because he's kind of like over the couch. It falls in front of the couch. He falls behind it. Type of thing.
Yeah, it's a great fall down scene. Just like nobody. It's very bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And you could almost start laughing here. I mean, if you haven't laughed, like you could very easily be pulled right out of the suspense of this film during these scenes. It's almost comical. And again, I tried to get back into the suspense and I do appreciate that John Carpenter was going for suspense over gore. Right? You never saw any real blood. You didn't see people getting hacked to pieces.
No.
So he's going for the suspense. The music is going with it. The darkness is going with it. But now this is just getting silly. It's funny at this point.
Yeah, I would agree there. This is, like I said, once we started, I think it was about the point of the first kill with the girl in the car that it all just started to become a little goofy to me. And at that point, I was already chuckling through quite a bit of the end, the last hour there, whatever it is.
But yeah, let's go. We'll talk about that after. But so literally very quickly. So she stabs him. He gets up, goes upstairs. She then gets the kids, I'm guessing, into a locked bathroom or whatever it is. And then her plan is to hide in a closet with kind of laminated slats that you could literally
plywood
down. Yeah,
literally, they're so cheap. They're so cheap.
You could literally fall into them by accident and they would break. But for some reason, she puts a little tie or like something like little
ties a string.
Yeah, a bit of string. That's it. He's screwed. He can't get, and he's like, and they give it like he gives it, and then he realizes, well, I'm gonna. And he's clattering. You got to think about this is a guy who's just held up a 13-stone man
with one hand
in the air with one handed, and he's struggling to smack these flimsy slats, literally that you could break. But yeah, so it gives her time, to
wire hanger
to fashion it into
a poking device. So he finally gets in with the knife. Again, and pokes him in the eye. So he goes back. She gets the knife, and then I can't remember if she does it through or opens the door, but she gets a good stab in the chest, don't she? Like whilst these hold like kind of.
Yeah, I think it's while she's still in there because I think when she comes out of it, he's kind of laying down right in front of her.
She stabs up with the knife. She kind of stabs up. It's more like he's over her. She's holding his eye, but she slashes upward.
Yeah, so she comes out and then she like the wind blown from the curtain, you can see that already. And then she goes to the door, she's something, and then he does the Undertaker move.
Yep.
That's the only way I can explain it. That literally is like, and this must be his little thing, is literally, and then like everybody's like the girlfriend was like, he must have some good abs to do that. That's probably hard to do. For that. Yeah. So like
you gotta have serious
he literally does SummerSlam, whatever, 1996. Like Undertaker, boom, straight up. And then I don't know if this happened. I would have to know the film like history. Is this the first when you think they're dead, they're not dead? Like there's always the next one. Like I don't know.
It's gotta
This
be-
has got to be
I
one of
gotta
the.
think there are
Look,
probably
figure it
some
out.
You would
older
hope, yeah.
B
You would
movies
think
like
so.
that.
Yeah, but yeah. So then, of course, so he goes for her. She this the like she gave. I can't like Loomis is now been running down the street. We
Yeah.
missed that scene. We kind of missed out that he literally again. It's there as oh my god! How did you not notice the car is literally in your
5
vision?
feet, 5 feet behind
Like,
him the whole
so-
time. It's like
Yeah.
he's staking out that house the whole time, and he finally
he didn't
turns
figure
around
out-
and realizes, oh, the car's been here the whole time. Didn't realize.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so silly. But then,
Yeah,
he
so-
starts walking down the street. The kids at that point, she's already given the directive to
Running
get
out,
out of
yeah.
the house, get some help. So that's kind of how, he finds out, oh, that Michael Myers must be here then. And he ends up in the house.
So he goes up. He a little ruckus, let's say that, and it's kind of like he shoots, and then Michael Myers goes over the balcony.
Gets blasted out the window over the
Blasted over,
balcony.
and then you see him. He's he's a goner. He's a goner. Let's say that, and then the best like he goes over and kneels down to her, and I think he says, "Are you okay?" And then she just goes, like, who's the boogeyman? Is the boogeyman real or something like that?
I think
And
it was,
then-
was
yeah,
that,
and then
or
he
is that the boogeyman?
they're the
or something?
boogeyman. And he's like, yes, it was. Like, literally, yeah, yep, yeah, that was. Yeah, don't worry about it. And then, of course, Loomis goes to the balcony, looks over, and because what do we see?
Nothing.
Not
Nothing.
Michael Myers.
Gone.
Yep.
And it's and then boom, done. Literally, I like that. That is good. I like that
So-
because that does end up that's the book. Yes, that's the boogeyman. And I
Right.
think if you leave the cinema in the day, that would have freaked you out even more. That what he's been stabbed,
Right.
he's been literally spiked, he's been shot, and he's still the boogeyman.
Right. And I actually did like that kind of final ending for him. Because we didn't see him we just see him disappear, which I think is nice because it adds a little bit more eeriness to it.
Yeah.
But I
How
couldn't
it
help
cuts.
Right. But I couldn't help but think he somehow got up quicker from that than he did. So he just got shot like 3-4 times, falls over a balcony backwards, and he gets up way quicker than just the knitting needle to the neck
Being
earlier,
poked with a needle. Yeah.
or the hanger and the knife afterwards. Like there's somehow the most damage he's taken all movie. He gets up the quickest. Like he could have just had Loomis maybe talk to her for a little bit longer, something like that, then go over and look. But he goes to look pretty quickly, like almost immediately. And Michael's already up and gone. It's like, oh, you guys could have let that breathe a little bit more by taking a little bit more time for him to actually go look. But I did like that. That was probably my favorite of the scenes where you think maybe he's dead, but he's really not.
Now, you may have seen this in the documentary, James. Did you hear how John Carpenter shot 2 endings?
Oh, I know there is 2 endings, but
I didn't know that.
So
Yeah.
it
I
very
can't-
subtle differences.
Yeah.
So he shot one. He said to Donald Pleasence, I want you to look over and be shocked and horrified at not seeing him. And then I want you to look over and I want you to think, I knew this was going to happen. I'm not surprised.
Right.
And they use the I'm not really surprised
Yeah.
facial expression on Loomis because he knew better.
Right.
Also, the assumption that him being gone was the setup for a sequel is completely wrong because John Carpenter did not want a sequel.
No.
He wanted it to be that he's gone. He is the boogeyman. He's gone. That's the end of the story. This is a self-contained story. And that's the ending that he intended, not to set up a sequel. Now, we can see.
Sequels.
Yes,
Yeah.
11 of
Boy,
them.
was he,
12
was
of
he
them.
misled. They did quite a
12
few.
sequels to this film.
Well, should we go
Holy
to
moly.
Bosh? You're talking about that. Should we go to this?
Shall we look at the numbers? So we keep saying
Numbers.
how cheaply this film was made. It was made for less than $1 million. $345,000 this film was made from. Oh
Yeah,
my
that
gosh.
sounds about right.
This may be it is the I won't keep saying cheapest. That's rude. it is the lowest budget film that we've reviewed so far. Adjusted for inflation today, that's 1.5 million. That's nothing.
Mhm.
It went berserk. It made, what is that, a 3,000 time return on its investment. It made 70 million. That's just this film. Adjusted for inflation, that's 328 million today. In real dollars, the entire franchise, all 13 Halloween films, have made over what would be today $800 million. So the sequels, obviously the successive sequels weren't as successful as this film when you look at the budget relative to what it earned. It did win the Saturn Award in 1979, which is that's the Film Society for Science Fiction and Horror, and it won for Best Horror Film of 1978, awarded in 1979. There were 12 sequels, as I said, and this film is known as the first of the teen slasher films, leading into a whole slew of this genre going into the 1980s, and then later replicated in another wave, so you would kind of put this film, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, you'd put those all together in a batch, and then you'd have the next batch of Scream and, that next wave. But in between those waves, as I mentioned before, this film was, kind of replicated. There were nods to it in, The Simpsons, not just the Treehouse of Horror, but in other parts of The Simpsons, and really all throughout different, different media. The iconic, grabbing of the knife and that slashing motion that has become synonymous with this film was originally synonymous with Psycho. And I mentioned that John Carpenter really had an affection for Alfred Hitchcock films, which aren't gory, but they are so suspenseful. And in his interview with Mark Kermode, who is a film critic in the UK, who actually produced, not a documentary, but an interview. I think it's called "He Had to Return Home" or "He Has Come Home," where Carpenter explained the difference between suspense and surprise, and he placed a greater weight on suspense than on surprise, and he would totally disregard shock. So he kind of had those three levels: suspense, surprise, and shock. And he wanted to create tension and suspense to such a degree that you wouldn't have to show the gore in order to get the surprise and the misdirection in order to, provide those jump scares that we all know. He really thought through that. After I watched that interview, I did have a different appreciation for this film, and I really understood more about what he was,
Well,
trying to do.
there is even scenes, and this is where we're going to go back to other scenes. So there are scenes in this where you see Michael Myers, yeah, and then we've said he disappears, yeah, because the camera angle changes, and John Carpenter wanted it is not, you would see it as the audience's point of view, so they would be like, I suppose you call it like a drone. You see the things, now you want to turn back to the main characters and you turn back and gone. But what are the main characters doing? They're still looking in the same direction. So they would see him move, but it's how he did it, as he wanted that change of element, that you, the audience, are seeing your point of view. You are changing your point of view, not the main cast, not Michael Myers. You're seeing your point of view.
Right.
So that is, I like that, how he realized kind of things. I don't care that if your logic kind of that, they are looking that way, but it's you, the audience, are in the film. You are seeing that suspense. Now, is it a horror movie? It's not. Like, I wouldn't even say it was horror at that. There's like other worse, probably horror ones. It's like a thriller at most, I would call this. But I think this is a great one, probably into the 80s, that you want to take your girlfriend on a first date, get a bit cuddly, in a bit of popcorn and she wants to get close to you because it's a bit scary. It's kind of like that first kind of date kind of movie. I would say
Right.
it's kind of like you want a little jump, but not too scary. But is it a little bit freaky? Yeah, not really. Is it a little bit jumpy in places? Just about, just enough. Is it a great movie? This is where it is hard because is it a great written? Probably not. Is it a good movie? Probably yes, because of what it led other works, other
Yeah.
things to do, and how iconic it is. And that's why I think this had to be on the list because it speared so much different
did.
like rip-offs, genres, how movies were written, how it got that, you don't always have to show and tell. Don't always have to show and tell. You just give us that little snippet and people will take on board what they see as relevant facts of what is on screen. And I think that was what the scary bits about what made Michael Myers so iconic is when like there is a slight reveal of his face, but he puts it straight back, mask back on, is you don't know like the backstory of Mike Myers is subtle because it's not from the point of view of Mike Myers. So you don't know much about him in this movie. And I like that. And that's why I said I think it's good. This movie as a standalone movie. I think if they left it here, I think this would be iconic. I think this would have a more grand status as well how much it did in the box office. I think it would have sat more well because I think knowing the later films tarnishes this film a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, kind of not look at not even just what came after, because obviously this spawned a lot of great horror that came after it. But when you're looking at just the Halloween franchise, I think it's probably a little difficult to not see in your mind things like Halloween, H2O, and all these awful ones that came out after it, because they just branched off for so far. But I tend to myself look at the first two of these as kind of their own thing. And then there was this just studio corporate franchise kind of takeover of the franchise, of the IP that turned it into what it was when I was growing up, with all those awful, ones that came after it.
But they did. I think it was the three, wasn't it? There was Halloween, Friday the 13th, and
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
They are
Those
the
were
three.
killers.
After this, then they were them two, and then they went, "Oh, let's
Freddy
milk
versus
it,
Jason and all these things we wanted to.
But they've done it like we do. I've done it always like Saw movies. Was there Saw 10 now?
They go
it
too
just
far.
got over like Fast and Furious. Not a great, never great, but literally let's milk it. They can milk it. They're gonna milk it, and that's what they did with this franchise. They knew how to have something. It's great. Like the documentary, and the guy was like, we like it wasn't known to release on Halloween Day. No, you're like, and he was adamant this releases only bang on Halloween. And it was clever. It's called Halloween. Do it.
That's great
marketing. And it's great. You're gonna have people take, your girlfriend there for the first date, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a little bit scary. Not really. Maybe back then, a little bit like jumpy because you're trying to be cutesy in the cinema, and it plays in. It's a great one to take. I got scared.
And I think exactly what you just said there back then is very important when it comes to this one, because so for me, for my just general opinion on the movie, I have to preface this with saying this is not my genre. So anybody in the chat that maybe disagrees, or anybody who watches this afterwards that maybe disagrees with me, let me just say I do have a little, not so much bias, so much as this isn't my taste of movies. Horror has never been my taste. I do prefer a thriller, and I know this kind of leans into being a bit more thriller than horror, but horror has just never been my genre. So it's always going to be a tough one for me to give a great score on. But with this one, rewatching it now, it feels very dated. It honestly felt more dated to me than The Great Escape did, believe it or not, which this came out 15 years later. This one felt very dated. I can appreciate this one for what it is and at what it was at the time. And I can 100% see why it did so well, given that it was kind of one of the first, I feel like one of the first horror movies to kind of go about it in this way, with the suspense and the tension and the creepiness and the stalking. versus just maybe like your monster movies that were more of the horror type of style leading up to it. You know, and like Stacey said, this probably was a fantastic movie for, you know, the teenage to early 20s people going on dates, and oh, you hear this new creepy movie, the guy takes the girl, she's clutching onto his arms, and all these scenes. I'm sure it was fantastic for that, and the younger audiences probably got a good scare out of it. The more adult audiences, I'm not sure how much of a scare they got out of it, but even they probably liked it. Can totally understand why it did so well. I appreciate it for what it is and what it was at the time. And I definitely appreciate its iconic status in the history of pop culture, what spawned after it. Like I said earlier, I think before we started the show, this was definitely one of those situations of, you know, this movie had to walk so movies after it could run type of thing. It paved the way. With all those pleasantries said about it, I did not enjoy it. I enjoyed it more when I watched it as a kid. It was just, again, and like oh God, I keep doing Sandy. I almost had it right the first time and then switched it to Stacey. Like Sandy said, I can definitely understand a lot of what John Carpenter was going for with the suspense over surprise and gore. And I 100% appreciate that, because one thing I haven't liked about the horror movies from my era, which was like pretty much Saw going forward, has been that they've gone for the gruesome, gross out factor versus any kind of real horror. And that's where I really fell out of the genre, because to me, I'm not scared by gross stuff. I'm just grossed out by it and don't really want to watch that. So I appreciate what he was trying to do with the suspense and all that. And I think at the time, it probably was very good at creating that tension and all that. But now, you know, some of the ways, like I said, with the lights being off, the illogical decisions that a lot of these characters make in terms of, you know, the girls and even the guy, Paul, or Bob, whichever one it is that actually is in the house, the way they build suspense seems too illogical and too purposely done just to try to build suspense, if that makes sense. Like, again, the turning on the lights, that would be a deliberate decision to try to make the movie more suspenseful, and the lack of logic there just kind of takes me right out of it. So it's like I said, it's one of those things. I appreciate it for what it is, what it was, and what it created, and in its status in pop culture. But I unfortunately have to say I don't think it's a good movie almost in any aspect. I don't think the writing is particularly good or strong or tight, however you want to put it. There's too many plot holes and too many devices used just to push things along. The dialogue is not great, and it's not because there's not a lot of it. There's, you know, directors like the guy who just did Dune, I'm just going to say Denny V, because I can never pronounce his last name right, who's not a big dialogue guy, but when he uses dialogue, it's usually pretty good. So it's kind of a quality over quantity thing with him. And the dialogue just isn't really there. And when it is there, it's not very good. The acting is not great on a lot of cases. And I thought the shooting of it, you know, in terms of the cinematography, was fine. It was adequate. There was a few scenes that were cool, like the first one. The perspectives of Michael ones were all pretty cool. But like Sandy said, it is a bit of a dull town and all that. It's like nothing really pops out cinematography.
Well, that's it. That middle, that section
mm-hmm.
is just a connective tissue.
Right.
Say that. Mm-hmm. It's not there to do much, because it's like they had two different, the second director doing that section, because it's a boring scene. It's like it is literally you're panning with them, you're just walking with them, and I say all the rest is that kind of very suspenseful, like John Carpenter kind of.
Right.
You're moving with the camera, you're moving with the characters, you're doing it. It's all supposed to be a bit tense, you know. It's all supposed to, you know, get you a bit. Oh, where are we? You know, yeah. And it's that dark. You know, it's like if you take your logic brain and then throw it away. You know, like they didn't have time to turn the lights or something like silly like that.
Right.
It's probably going to be.
That's probably exactly why it did so well, because at that point, you know, all this younger audience that I gotta imagine it was a hit with teenagers and all that during that era. And you are going into see this as a Halloween movie on a date or with your buddies or with your friends, whatever it is, and you're eating popcorn, you're enjoying your time. It's a Friday night. It's the big movie on the street. And all that aspect of going in to see it, I think you could enjoy it a lot more. Yeah. When you're watching it like we just did, in order to break it down scene by scene, thing by thing, in order to discuss it in like a book club style, that's when I think more of these issues kind of pop up. And it's harder to take your brain out of it and just enjoy it for what it is.
That's what
which
I
is
think this
probably easier
movie
to do in the
does.
80s.
I bet all three of us liked it when we first watched it.
Yep, and I was also a lot younger when I watched it too. So
Yeah.
again, I think it hits with the younger audiences a bit more because your younger audience isn't trying to pick apart the logic; they're
Yeah.
just enjoying the ride.
And I
so
think
again-
that's what this works. It's a great. Let's say if you get to watch it when you're, you still like I'm gonna say still do your dad's VHS tape, but like if you're like below 18, you get to what's this?
Right.
Watch it on DVD or like find it on Netflix or whatever. At that age group, it's going to scare you because you shouldn't be watching it. It's got that kind of thing. You got the lights off. You're probably eating popcorn, whatever. And now, if you're literally between probably 25 and under, it's probably going to do the same. Like, first time, that's a bit scary. Above that, if you're watching it for the second time, I think you're going to be like, that's a bit dumb. That's a bit
it's a
stupid.
bit
I liked
silly.
it when I was younger, and then that's the problem. It's not that it's not grown with time. It's just that people, you start to see the faults with it.
Right.
But
I
like
think
that, you see the greatness as well with it. You see where a B movie and 3,000 times its budget and went absolutely mad because it was clever. The bits that you remember, the iconic bits, are clever. The unfortunately how they got there, it's just to get there. It's like if you watch the trailer and they put the scary bits in the trailer, you would only probably watch like a 2-minute trailer and you would get the movie, and it would be exactly the same. Now, the clever bits on this, I think, are the points of view with the cameras. I think that I think Michael Myers having his own theme tune every time he comes on, like that kind of like that, and it gets you, he's back, that's his theme tune. Everybody else is quite dull, as you say. There's no music really, and then he comes on, this high, comes on, and I think it's really like that's clever, and it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be gripping, it's supposed to be thing. Is it well written? No. Was it supposed to be well written? I don't think it. I think it was butchered. They wanted to get it out. It's a B movie. This is a classic B movie done well. Is it the greatest B movie I've seen? No. Is it great because it spurred on everything else? Hell yes. Would I? This is where I think you've got to score it two ways. As a standalone movie, it's going to be low. But what it did for cinema, it's got to have a few points on top of that. Yeah, and I think that's where the thing is like, like you would have to, like, I'm going to say, because it was my pick, if I had to go for that, I'm going to score it like a 5 out of 10. Probably it's a mid movie. It's got its flaws, and I can see it. I like bits of it, and but if I have to like then put it into, it did what I know it did to cinema, and how it was kind of, it brought other genres that we've got and what other cinematographers did, and it did for directors, doing their own music, how it was shot, cinematography. It's still only be a 7, and I mean a low bar 7. I mean clawing onto that 7 with bare things. Yeah, it's not going to get any higher. I mean, it's like if I said 6.9, I'm still clawing on there. Yeah.
No, I'd agree. And I think you said something, was a very good way to put it there too, was the movie has not necessarily grown better with time, but I think a caveat to that is it has held on, I think, to the demographic age group that it has been most successful in, or probably was most successful in, which is, I think now, if you're, like you said, if you're under 25 now and you watch it for the first time, I think you will, or maybe not now as much, but still to a degree, just given the way it's filmed and all that is a bit dated. Yeah. But I think you will still enjoy. Like, I look forward to the day where I have kids who are old enough to watch it and we can throw on the old Halloween. I do believe, a younger audience watching it with your parents, something like that, they'll still get freaked out. It can be a fun thing.
I say, like, you get it freaked out if you watch.
Yeah. So I think that teenage.
We all laugh at like Friday the 13th, like Jason. It's stupid. Like how like if you like, even if you like, I would say probably the freakiest one out of genre is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Those are always my favorite. Those three killer characters, those are my favorite.
And then you got what's the hell one?
Hellraiser,
Hellraiser?
actually, I think
Hellraiser.
Hellraiser
You
was
got the
very
Texas
well
Chainsaw
done.
Massacre
Yeah,
ones. That
I
they're
like
then you
all
got
that
doing
one.
that stuff
and then
too.
you kind of then you're going into the slasher kind of the
Mhm.
things like that, and you got that kind of like pretty 70s one. This is like, was it the house at the end of the street, and what's it called, the
Last
thing?
House on the
House
Left.
on the
Yeah,
Left.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of got that kind of genre hitting there, but this is the first one where they kind of instigated this kind of killer, and
Right.
that's it. So I think
A
that thing,
franchise-based killer. Too,
yeah,
like that.
that's it. And I
Yeah.
think like going on to that, like it would be very, it's one of those, if you're a movie, any movie goer, you know who, like, I suppose Mike Myers, like that, mostly like Michael Myers is really Michael Myers is. You know if you know the look, you know what it is, and that might be for the like H2O or whatever, or the later ones or the remakes they've all spurned into, but it's iconic look. They've all got that iconic. Are they great? Like, even what I've just mentioned before there, they're not great movies, but we all know them and we all enjoy them, and we all kind of take the piss, and there's all like they're all in pop culture. You cannot get, there's always going to be a show somewhere that's going to like reference a slight bit onto it. It's like, even like Psycho, like it's an iconic movie. Is it one of the greatest like thrillers on that? Probably not. There's like aspects of it like we think, but we all know the great bits, and we all know like the like that, and it's just like everybody remembers all that on like the parts of it you love, and it's like that. But there are other ones in there, but like that spurred into this spurred into other ones, and it's like that. But yeah, they're not 10 out of 10 movies, but we all know them.
No.
We've all watched them.
Oh, they're all just
yeah.
It's like we said, they're iconic in terms of pop culture. Now, have they all aged well? No, but they are still iconic. It's like we've been saying. It's the kind of risk that they took at the time in terms of doing something different. Plus, then on top of it, the success it had. Because again, this movie was incredibly successful, and what comes after it. I think you have to be able to appreciate that.
Yeah.
And the fact, like I said, I do think it still holds on to a certain demographic where there are new generations watching this movie and still getting creeped out by it. Their second time watching it, maybe they watch it when they're 20 or 24 instead of 14.
I think this would be a great one if you're a young couple, cuddle up to the sofa, bit of popcorn.
Yeah, it's the fall season.
You know your partner's a little bit jumpy.
Yeah,
and then that it's a great one. That's it. Go on it. So on that, Sandy, out of 10. Go on.
Jay,
then.
did you give it a score though?
Oh, sorry.
I'll
do the stasis method here, and I'll give it 2 scores. As a movie in a vacuum on its own, I give it about a 5 out of 10. There's a lot of flaws, a lot of issues. It's not the greatest. Now, for what it is, what it was, and what it's created or spawned off of it, or even just led the path to, I'll give it a solid 7. I think its relevance in pop culture is something that you just can't overlook. I always use this test as my kind of popularity test. I call it the mom test. If my mother knows what it is, it's probably very popular because she's not in tune with things like that. So if she knows Superman, for example, that's a popular character. If I ask her who Green Arrow is, he's not quite as popular as Superman. So it's kind of always my litmus test. If I was to ask my mother who Michael Myers was, she would know what it is. And that to me lets me know that this is a big thing in pop culture, a very successful thing. So I think for that alone, I give it a 7. For the movie, I give it about a 5.
Sandy.
Well, I'm so glad, as always, that we're having a good conversation. And I do appreciate, again, after listening to the interview with John Carpenter and some of the other online reviews, like the good old Siskel and Ebert, who are the constant movie reviewers here in the United States, who up and down praise this film, and they're usually overly critical about everything. I don't like this film. I do appreciate what it did. I do appreciate what John Carpenter accomplished with such a meager budget. There are a couple of other funny things if you watch the film again and are critical of the scenery. This is supposed to be taking place in Illinois, I believe. And yet there are palm trees in the background when you do get those shots down the street, because it was filmed. It was actually filmed in John Carpenter's neighborhood in California.
Mhm.
So, and it's supposed to be Halloween, but all the trees are green.
Yeah.
And they had to just
Did-
throw leaves on the
Okay,
ground to
so
make it.
I'm not the
Yeah,
only one that noticed that then.
it was very green.
The leaves seemed like they were literally being thrown by somebody off camera
Oh,
just to
they
be
were.
in it. Okay. I thought that was just me at first, but I'm glad you noticed that too.
It was filmed in May.
Oh,
So
God,
it was,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
and when you've got the brightest green on the trees and the palm trees as well.
Mhm.
And I get it, but we also have to be mindful of the films that do it right and do better. So I give this film a 4. I do appreciate what it contributed. I wouldn't go any higher than a 5. If I were to give it a separate score. I think this movie, for what it did accomplish, it also did some box checking, which I don't appreciate. So the box checking, and we have to look at it in 2 ways. You can either be setting the standard or you can be checking the box. Where it set the standard was, um, this whole genre of, babysitter slasher horror flicks, and, the hiding in the house and not turning the lights on and the phone is dead. Okay, we'll put that aside and we'll say that that kind of set the standard. But where it checked the box, and I'm sorry I have to bring it up, is the gratuitous frontal nudity. This is the other reason why the film was popular. Every teenage boy in America, ran to see 5
Oh,
seconds
I'm sure.
of frontal nudity. And that just whole teenage gimmicky thing, right? You had the kind of, smarty mouth teenage girls, and the, just the, hey, I need a beer. Well, you're in high school, you don't need a. It was the check the box thing, just
Mhm.
to be that typical teen flick, just to get just to get people in the seats in the
Mhm.
theater. And I kind of downgrade it for that just a little bit, in terms of, um in that respect, it's not being innovative. And you'll see so many films throughout the 80s, 90s, early 2000s that have that formulaic, regardless of the genre, right? You have to have that frontal nudity scene, because that's going to draw in a certain number of folks to the
Mhm.
box office just to see that, which is it's just so
But that
ridiculous.
is like what,
What
from
kind of lives
what,
do you have,
like from like 75 probably to like the
Yeah.
probably like mid 90s, probably that it
Oh,
had that
Fast
like
Times at Ridgemont
but
High.
Yep.
but you had it from probably like that, like all the way from like what to like American Pie is like
Oh,
gonna be
yeah, it's
Yeah.
only
that you're gonna
until
have
really
that like that.
recently.
That was a big like they kind of stopped it now, and it's put there as a hey look we got you got
It
your boobs.
it
That's
ruins
it.
such good films, though, because not that I mind, I'm not a prude, but, I can come home and see that. And
But
now,
one
hey, now
movie
at
it
least
didn't ruin is Caligula.
well, that is from a
No
That's
one,
not
historical
no
on our
point
one.
of
list. I'm sure that's not on the Wheel of
from
Fortune.
a historical point of view, and okay for history, right? That's totally fine. But yeah, the box checking. I mean, some films were totally completely ruined by that, because, like, there are scenes in fantastic films that I could not take my kids to, right? I mean,
Yeah.
even Love Actually has that whole unnecessary thread of the 2 stand-ins in a pornographic film, right? So and I'm
Oh
like,
yes, it does.
why the Joanna Page and
Mm,
Martin
yeah.
Freeman? Like,
Mm.
that film, I adore. Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure. I love that film. I would love for my kids to see that film. And it's like, I gotta, and I know they made a PG version. There are other films like that. It's like, why? Why do you have to put that? So I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I don't mean to sound like a prude, but for
No, I
this
don't. I
film,
don't disagree. Honestly, I think that there's a lot of those scenes that are forced into things just to get a sex scene in there that are, one, misplaced. Two, they're becoming awkward to watch, even if you're watching them alone. To be honest with you, like it just, I don't know. I'm a bit tired of
Uh,
sex scenes in movies.
I'm
They
gonna
feel
tell you
awkward nowadays.
two stories now. One, any Scandinavians watching, they're just going, "What are you talking about?" Because literally in that kind of era, but you think, okay, I'm going to set the scene. I'm going to set a scene here now about boobs and tits and whatever that like could be embarrassing in movies. So, me and my girlfriend have been dating for not a few months. Yeah, so it was the first time. you want to come up, meet my parents? It's time, you know. So we travelled up. She's a Midlander, so we travelled up to meet her parents. Of course, we got to stay overnight. That's going to be awkward, you know, because her dad's a bit man in the house, not me, you know, kind of thing. So my girlfriend thought it'd be let's put on a movie. Now everybody's seen Borat, yeah.
Oh my word!
Yeah,
Actually,
everybody's
I
seen
have not. I have not, but
Okay.
I'll go with it.
Borat is a funny movie. It's taking the piss out. Most of taking the piss out of Americans, yeah, but it's kind of funny and it thinks. He made another movie after that.
Bruno, that's it, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so Bruno
Jesus
is he? We've like I didn't know about the movie, and I was like, "What is it?" It's the Borat movie, but I was like, "Oh, it's the Borat money." That's it's funny. It's a bit on the like heavy on certain parts, but it's funny. You know, you can take the piss out of it. Bruno is about a gay German or Dutch guy.
Yeah, like a fashion journalist,
whatever. But in the first, I would say 3 minutes of the movie, he is having gay sex with a midget.
Oh, good.
And you see everything. I'm sitting there. This is the first time I've met my girlfriend. Literally, they're there. And the worst thing is, I'm like, please turn it off. Please turn it off. This is getting embarrassing. You can see they're uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. Jay, her girlfriend, is literally there going, and I'm like, oh my god. So afterwards, I was like, how did you not turn this off? Like, we had to watch this full movie, and
you watched
she
the
was
whole
like,
thing. Oh, it only gets worse after that too.
And it gets really bad. It gets really bad. Like, there's so much you shouldn't see.
It's a rough one.
It's a rough one. And she was like, I got so embarrassed, I forgot where the remote was. And then she went, I found the remote, but then it got past the point where I thought, should I turn it off? And I was like, yes, you should have.
We're in the trenches now.
And it was like this whole movie, nobody spoke to each other and nobody really laughed because it was so uncomfortable.
That's hilarious.
So boobs in like that, it wasn't boobs, it was everything else but boobs. And that was very uncomfortable. So if I had boobs in that things, like a couple of things, it's like when you're I don't know.
Boobs would have been a
breath of fresh air in that movie. It's like, you know when you're a young teen, I suppose, like that, and you're watching a movie like a TV program movie with your parents, and then all of a sudden boobs come up or a sex scene, and you're like, ooh, a bit uncomfortable. And like I think like in the UK, probably people know that is when your parents turned over and like queer folk was on, and you're like, oh, what's going on? Your parents didn't know what to do because gay sex was on TV, and it's like first time ever, and it's just like a bit like back in the 90s, people get like a bit freaked out, but like it's like that. But it's those moments are different to where it was just like different to when it on this one, it's just there to because that movie had it and that movie had it, so we need it. And like the producer went, and the producer probably went, have you got a boob drop? Oh no, but can you put one in?
Find one.
Yeah.
And you see every film in those areas. There's just one, there has to be one. Again, not being a prude, but it really does take you out of the
15 years later.
I agree with you entirely, Candy.
It is more integral to this story. Obviously, it is because, of the setting and what's driving Michael Myers. But,
Tommy's
again,
got a question. On your
I feel like,
score.
is the score based on horror genre across the board? Or all? Oh, no, the score is no, because I do like there are horror movies that I do like. I like Nightmare on Elm Street. I think it's the most original of the more, of that kind of period. I think it's really original. I think it's really well shot. Again, probably the first 2 or 3 even, but not after that. There's like a million Nightmares on Elm Street. And to your point about being iconic, all you need to do is say Freddy. You don't have to say Freddy Krueger. You don't have to say Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street. You just say Freddy and everyone knows who Freddy is.
Right.
Jason, everyone knows who Jason is. Michael, well, Michael's more common name, so people would say Michael Myers. But those films, obviously did have an impact, and it's interesting to see how you mentioned that this film looks dated. I would now I'm thinking I need to go back and watch the original Nightmare on Elm Street to see if I think that looks dated or not. Because now I think I'd like to compare some of those earlier ones, or even Friday the 13th, which I didn't particularly like Friday the 13th. I did like
I never liked
Hellraiser.
those.
I felt
I
like
would say
Hellraiser had a
out of all of
story.
them, I would think I would say Friday the 13th is the weakest.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yep.
I think
And
he's.
I would
think
say
Jason's
Nightmare on Elm
equally-
Street is
Mhm.
is the cleverest. I don't
Yeah.
think it's the most well shot, but I think it's the most excuse my French, the most mind fuck. Because
Yeah, and-
you
and
can't
that's
get
why I
out of the
love it.
situation. I
Right.
love it when they accidentally fall asleep. Let's say.
Exactly. See, and that's why I like that one more. And it tends to be any horror films that I do like, or some of the more cerebral ones, or more just kind of freaky in concept. Where Jason and Michael Myers, as much as they are creepy, if you were ever in that situation, something about it just never gets me, like with
But-
that. Ooh,
yeah.
that was eerie feeling afterwards. But when you watch things like Nightmare on Elm Street, or for my generation, it was The Ring was a big one, where there's that creepy idea of you watch the movie, 7 days later you die, all that. The one or The Omen, another one. Something about the ones that are a little bit more of, like you said, kind of a mind fuck type of thing, make you feel, I don't know, they resonate with me a little bit more. And Nightmare on Elm Street.
I must say the ones I don't know, I'm not high religious, I must say, admit to that. But the ones that have got that, there you go, the Omen, the ones that have got that religious element to it, that it could be.
That's what I said.
Yeah,
Mhm.
It really just gets you. It's like, oh, because even if you're an atheist or whatever, if it becomes
that little
true
bit of
and it is there, and it's
Oh.
literally your little nugget there, it literally freaks you out.
Right.
I like the ones that you go, oh, that's a bit weird. I don't like that, but I like that moment when you have to do that. You have to shrug your shoulders. Like, but the worst thing is, like, if you look at like, we know we're going off the other films, the four. If you look at the other ones, like, apart from this, they do get bloodier.
Oh, for sure.
They show more blood. They show you. We've got to be a bit more hardcore, and that's what like happened. I think, like, modern day. That's why I hate, probably in the last probably 20 years. I hated horrors only because they are they're just there for that effect, like Hostel.
I hate that movie. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
It started a little bit with Saw, but Saw 1, if you look back on it, it's still more
I like
cerebral
Saw.
kind
I like
of concept.
Saw. The rest of them,
right. What will you
I
do
don't
to get out of this
Yeah.
concept? 2 sucked, 3 sucked. They all sucked after the first, but that first one was good. It was Hostile. That, to me, I think that I almost even remember the year. I want to say that was like 05, 06 when that one came out. It stuck with me for years because it was that damn scene where they clipped the Achilles of whoever the hell's in the chair.
Yeah.
It was so gross, and that was the movie that started the switch to gore, in my opinion. And it's been a crap genre ever since.
Well, it wasn't
until recently. I did like The Conjuring.
I must say, but that is, again, it's like psychological. That
right,
is, again,
and even
like,
the religious type of
like, kind of,
right.
of, they're like a being, whatever it is, can be like ghosty kind of thing. But like now, even if you get like those, like, sometimes they just go, oh, we need to give it that really disgusting moment, like, like eating,
like somebody throws up a bunch of just blood type of thing. It's like,
it's like that, and like, even like, I know we said about like The Exorcist, like, people remember the disgusting bits, the sick scenes and all that, like that. But otherwise from that, it's not. It's, again, it's a very. I would say that's one of the most better horror movies because it plays with your mind. It's your inner kind of belief. Your witness in there, like the kind of between the exorcism and the priest, and it's like, I think they're the ones that kind of get you. I think, like the Omen series kind of gets you like that, and some other ones. But otherwise from that, I just think when it's just going, get a knife, get a chainsaw, let's go at them, and there's not really that kind of, like, it's just one person or a group of people just committing mass blood effect like Hostel did, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, there's another one.
It's just like, I just don't get it. So
No, I agree with that. The slashers or the styles of essentially there's this inhuman character going after you who's unkillable, all that. It just doesn't do it for me. The more cerebral, thought-provoking kind of creepy ones that just kind of stick with you after, those ones get me more.
Yeah, I don't think it's like Mike. If we go American Werewolf in London, it's kind of a beast, I suppose, monster horror. But what it does, it plays on you, like just going on for like the bit in Scotland off it goes like don't go off the path. It's just like that, little bits like that, and it's psychological, like that. It's not all that kind of like slasher, just like go into the, like nowadays they'd go into that pub and then everybody would get killed. It's just like kind of things. But yeah, unless you do it as like a joke. I think the only one I've seen that kind of does it as a good slasher kind of horror, but as a joke, was Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
If you take that into like what it was, but that was kind of two different movies in one. But I think that did it well. Apart from that, yeah. But yeah, zombie movies, Tomby. I think zombie movies are different. I think zombies, because they're zombies. I think zombies can be taken as it is, because I like to laugh at a zombie, because I think they're stupid. They're a stupid element. I don't take them as horror. And I wouldn't put them in the monster genre.
Yeah,
they are a different element.
They're
like that. So, but like this one is supposed to be
There's
like
kind of rules. There's rules to a zombie movie,
Yeah,
exactly.
I almost feel like zombie movies are more fun to try to put yourself into them and think like, oh crap, what if I was in this situation? More than they are scary or horror or anything like what's the Dawn of the Dead? I love that movie. I think it's great. I think it's a great zombie movie. And I know part of it isn't really scary. It's more of like, it's almost like a survival movie. And it's kind of interesting to put yourself in the shoes of these people surviving in the mall amongst these thousands of zombies outside of them. Zombie ones just never really strike me as part of the horror genre.
See, there you go. Event Horizon. I love Event Horizon.
I love Event Horizon. You know why I love Event Horizon?
Yes, Mr. Sam.
my secret crush, my old man crush now. My whole life.
Is like, but look at it. It's not a slasher. It's game. Nope. It's their mind. Like, even when he gets corrupted, it's his mind. It's like that. So, but it's great. That's what I say. Like the ones that literally they're manipulated, and you could feel like they've got no way out because their mind is getting manipulated. I like that. Or you're like, as a viewer, you're feeling the struggle with them. But when they just come up and they start slashing their throats or stuff like that, chopping their head off, and it's like wearing their skin, or eating their flesh. It's just like, you're just doing it for horror. A horror effect of going, oh, that's gross. That's gross. It's not cinema for me. It's not a movie I want to sit down to. I think it's lazy. I think it's beta into like some degenerates. And I'm like that. If you like it, you like it. But I just don't get it. I just don't get why you want to see a non-storyline get to somebody getting their intestines pulled out. What was the build up to that? What was the need for that? I'd rather have somebody enter a room and one leaves. Two go in, one goes out, and you don't see anything. That to me is more scary than the door closed and then they just like in modern day, two go in and you see this massive blood flight and like one kills them.
Disembowelment, this crazy crap.
My horror, two go in, you don't really know about them, and then one just comes out cleaning their hands with a rag. That would be better. You don't have to see it, but you know what's happened. Oh, that makes that person more dangerous to my mind, is because you don't know what they did. You don't know how they got there. You don't know if you could have got out of that situation. Now, with a lot of the ones now, you go, oh, well, they could have just got out of that bloody window. They could have called something. It's like,
Well, it's because your imagination is always going to be worse than anything that can be put on screen. And it's the same psychology as, if there's bad news coming and you don't hear the whole story, your brain is always going to think the worst. It's that same thing in thrillers, and it's what Alfred Hitchcock did so well, because he wrote stories with cinematography in mind. It's what he did so well with setting scenes. And by the way, Alfred Hitchcock films are usually all in bright sunlight. Dial M for Murder
Mhm.
is the most bright and colorful and that's more of a mystery. It's not a horror or thriller, but it's a mystery. But setting the suspense is definitely all about what's in the mind. I mean, we haven't mentioned like Silence of the Lambs, right? There's some elements of that film that are absolutely horror thriller, and with Buffalo Bob and the murder that um Lecter does commit in the
Mhm.
jail. Those are absolutely gruesome but well done. Um, if you were to say that this gruesome murder was well done, I think The Silence of the Lambs did that. But The Silence of the Lambs, like, okay, I'm going to see really most of the film is a psychological analysis and chit chat. It's
Mhm.
hard. That's most of the film. That's a
Yep.
scary movie. That is a really frightening,
Mhm.
disturbing film because it was done so well and it left so much to developing that the suspense. I mean, even okay, I'm gonna go back. Now you're gonna make me say it when I say suspense. Jaws.
Mhm.
Jaws is it is a perfect film, but it is a perfect suspense thriller. You don't see the shark until, I mean, really,
Okay,
really.
this is what I like about like those kind of, like what we said about
Yeah.
Halloween. You've seen it, you know it's coming. Like, and then nobody probably jumped. You just watched the movie first time. You probably had a little bit. Ooh, Jaws, when he goes in under the water the first time,
Uh-huh.
like I know it's happened. I know
You
it's
know
gonna
it's
happen,
coming.
and
You know it's
every
coming.
time every time I jump,
I
every
do.
time I
Every
jump,
single time.
every bloody time. It's like
Every
that
time
bloody
there's a
game I
body
play.
part.
Like,
Woo,
oh,
what? Every time. And
but
it's a
that is
combination of
great.
the
Yeah.
music, the lack and absence of music, which I find so effective in different films and television shows. When things, and there are a couple of moments in film that I really notice when things go absolutely silent. There's a moment in Return of the King, right before when the Nazgul are coming and the big light is shooting up, and Gandalf and one of the is Mary or Pip, whoever he's with, and they're having that conversation about this is the end, and then everything goes silent before that explosion. And then in one of my favorite television series, the newer Battlestar Galactica, where in most of the most intense dogfighting in space is done in silence because there's no sound in space.
Right.
But the absence of music, and that's what when we do talk about Jaws, we got to put a whole day aside. I'll just talk myself for 5 hours on Jaws, but it's the combination of that amazing two note, two notes that make the whole song, um, that represent the shark for 99% of the film, because you only see the shark for 1% of the film. But then there are moments underwater when it is silent, and the constant going between silence and that music just builds so much tension because
Mhm.
it's coming. Even though you've seen it 100 times, it's coming. And
But that's like this. That's why I think this movie works, because with Michael Myers, you don't really see him when you at the beginning like that, and it's exactly like other movies that we love, like Alien. Alien is scary because you don't see the
Mhm.
alien.
Mm,
It's like that.
absolutely.
Right.
It works in drama. It
Mm.
works in comedy too. When you think about television shows or films, mostly television shows, kind of the funnier ones, there's always some character that you never see, that you hear about but you never see. And I think of, like, I'm a kid of the reruns of, like, Cheers. You never saw who is it, Norm's wife, Vera. You
Mhm.
never saw her, but all you did was talk about her. And then in the spin-off Frasier, which I absolutely adore, you never see Maris, but you talk about, when you have that off screen that you can talk about, it makes for great comedy as well as
Mhm.
great suspense,
Yeah, and
because again, the imagination does all the work.
Right.
Your
but that's
own
the thing is, like,
imagination does
now
the work.
Hollywood have got this thing, and they've done it in the last. Oh my god, I can't remember. Like, we need a backstory for the backstory of a
Yeah.
backstory,
Too
and it's like that.
much.
Like I'm like Boba Fett. I think everybody
Yes.
agrees
Oh
like
my
that.
gosh.
Boba Fett was more interesting when you didn't know anything about him. As soon as they said it, like, boring,
100%.
don't care. It's like that. There's characters out there, and they are going to be like side characters of something like a show you love. I don't need to know the backstory. I don't need to know the backstory. They're more interesting in my mind
Mhm.
than you could ever give me. But then some Hollywood executive went, we need a backstory to that. We need a prequel, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, no, please don't, because it was more interesting being, I don't know. I can give my interpretation of this character or this monster, whatever, a thousand different conclusions. And everyone is more interesting than you could give me, because as soon as you give me one directive, that character comes a bit boring.
Well, part of the problem is that Hollywood itself as a whole, you know, I know there's obviously still a few bright lights over there, but for the most part, Hollywood has no imagination. And if they have no imagination, they can't write movies that require people to use their imagination, because they can't leave those spots blank for people to, you know, actually use theirs. They have to try to spell everything out. They have to try to say, like you said, backstory after backstory to give you as much information as possible. Exposition dumps that are almost insulting to say that you don't think the audience could figure this out, type of stuff. So when they have a lack of imagination there, they're not going to be able to write anything nowadays, you know, that requires people to use it.
Yeah, it is terrible. But let's go on. Sorry, just to break up the lack of imagination. We know something that has a great imagination, and we don't know what it's going to do. Shall we spin the wheel?
I'm down.
Off the wheel of film. Now,
everybody.
We talked about what we hadn't seen yet. So there are a lot of martial art films on there. You do have a handful of black and white films on there. I put some old Hollywood on there. Jay put a lot of gangsta films on there, which we'll talk about next time.
I threw up some very weird
some
old
westerns,
British.
war films.
I've got westerns. I actually started the Man with No Name series because it went on. I think it's on Amazon Prime for free. You can watch all three of them. So that's good.
Tommy, I don't know that film.
Best of the best. The best of the best is a American martial arts tournament film. I suppose the best way to do it. Yeah. I got when was like that's got to be early 80. I'd say 86. It wasn't well received. Let's say that it's entertaining. It's good, but it wasn't well received. It's a good movie.
Is there someone we know in it? Is it a
James L. Jones? We've got some. Oh, I forgot his name. I'm sure he's the guy who married Madonna.
Guy Ritchie?
Guy Ritchie?
No. Before
the
that,
other one. Sean Penn.
Sean Penn. I'm sure it's Sean Penn. Tom B will tell me. Like before, it's one of his first. He's skinny as, and then you've got some other actors I recognize from other things, but you wouldn't know their name. It's kind of like that. It's it's okay. It's a good Friday night watchable film.
So it wasn't Sean Penn, but it was Chris Penn. Not sure if there's any relation.
That's it. There you go.
The poor man.
They always give it. Yeah,
the Walmart version of Sean Penn.
That's great.
It had I think Eric Roberts, James Earl Jones, and Chris Penn are the only three that pop out to me.
Wow.
It is good.
So no, it's not in the Wheel of Film, Tomby. Sorry. I
don't know if you can see. This is the list. I'm just going to scroll for the list. I'll do it as kind of slow as I can. But I
have my book here. I started the book for Casino.
Yep, because Casino is the next episode. This will be for the one after that.
So do you think we're going to get... Okay, so as we've said... So we got a lot. So as we said, we have... So far, we have a connective tissue. But it's a bit weird. We have Coen Brothers. Then we broke it with Saturday Night Fever. Then we had Great Escape and this one, Halloween. They had a connective tissue in Donald Pleasant. So this one, I think this one should be standalone, and then the next two should be that. But we don't know. This one could, unless somebody can find a connective way of how we can get Saturday Night Fever with the other lot. I don't know.
Well, it was written by Nick Cohen not related to the Coen brothers.
Well, there
So,
you go.
know,
Okay,
as
so
a
we
We could
loose
say,
connection.
oh, we could do a little bit. I'll take
Loose
that.
connection.
Okay.
the
All
best
right,
I
are we
have
ready?
is they were both 1978. Outside
There
of
we
that,
go.
I can't
Oh,
see how the
that
connection.
too.
Okay, are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay,
As
okay,
ready
hold
as
it.
we'll ever
Okay,
be.
okay, let's go for hold it before we go there. Jay, what genre are you hoping for?
I was gonna say thriller, but to be honest, I'd like to hold some of those thrillers or / horror for October. So let's go with the comedy. I don't know. Have we done?
Comedy?
We haven't done a
we've
comedy.
not
Let's
done
go with the
comedy.
comedy.
Okay, Sandy.
I'd love to see that.
I want one of your foreign films. Let's go.
Oh,
Ooh, that's good.
Let's
That's
do it.
good.
Let's
yeah.
do it.
Now I'm gonna have to say I want a black and white. I've said this. I really want a black and white. I don't care what. Now it's either that. I did put a Carry On film on here, and
You
I
did.
think it'd be great for you two to watch a Carry On film. And I put it because they're iconically British, and I just want to get your take on it. So it's either that or I have some weird and wonderful foreign ones in there. So we're gonna do it. Let's do it. Okay,
All
5,
hail the wheel of film.
4, 3, 2, 1, go in.
Oh, the suspense is killing me.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Nice.
This is one of mine.
Yeah, it's one of yours.
Let's
Cool.
go.
And
Nice.
Luke.
Love that.
There we go. Okay,
Love that.
Stephen. Okay. Nice. Okay, there you go. Cool Hound Luke. I haven't seen that in a while, I must say that.
Yeah, it's
Do
been
we
a
have
little while
get,
for me.
do
so
we
this
have
should be good.
okay, do we have a rule that we have to come with boiled eggs?
God,
I'm
I'm
just gonna say that.
We just
You know.
have to eat them the entire stream.
Yeah,
Whoever
that's it.
stops
Oh,
first loses.
No betting. No.
First
no.
one to go down. Okay, cool. Okay, there you go. And what would you call this movie? What genre would you put this in? Drama. It's got to be drama. It's just got to be
It's like
drama,
a
isn't it?
drama.
Drama.
Yeah, it's got to be drama.
It's like a.
There you go. So there we go. So we have to find out if there's a connection between Cool Hand Luke and Casino. If not,
To see
then
if any
it's-
of the act. I don't think any of the actors.
No.
Let's see. It's going to be obviously Paul Newman and Dennis Hopper, right? Who else
Yeah.
is in this film? I'm gonna look and see who else is in this film. But
It's a good one. I haven't rewatched this in a long time.
oh yeah, I haven't watched this in a couple of years. So
I'll
I
have
don't
to
think my
look-
girlfriend's ever watched this, so this would be a good one. Casino, she has. So
yeah,
she,
we'll have to look through.
she's liking this as thing. This is quite, like again, it's got an iconic song in it. So
Yeah.
and the start of a Guns N' Roses song. What you've got, yeah, Civil War. What you've got
Oh,
here is
that's right.
failure to
To
communicate.
communicate.
Some man
Always.
just can't understand.
I am not seeing anything that's got a connective piece.
There you go. So there we go. We're going to get the next one. So the next one's going to be the connective tissue. If it does work out like that, something spooky is going on.
I think as we
Will
go
is-
along, obviously these are good films. They're just across a lot of different timelines and genres. So as we go through, I started on our private spreadsheet that we have. I started now keeping track of actors. Of course, we only have one double, which is Donald Pleasence. But I think as we go along, we're going to see the same actors and directors. So the Coen brothers as well.
Andy, do you know what we've not had yet?
What have we not had yet?
Sir Alec Guinness.
This is where because in our other conversation, but see, you and I tend to gravitate toward older films. We just do. And that era of those old war films and those old, for me, it's Alec Guinness, Peter O'Toole, that's the bar, Alec Guinness and Peter O'Toole. So, we'll get there. We'll get there. We got some Star Wars. Other things.
Oh god, that's it. If we get the big ones, that's going to be interesting. So, what's the big ones for you? Is going to be Jaws.
Jaws and Jurassic Park. I can speak for a month on each of those, and intellectually and entertainingly too. Those two films. Obviously, both books. Really, really, really good books. Oh, Cool Hand Luke. Hang on. I gotta see. You guys talk amongst yourselves.
But Jurassic Park, I always think Jurassic Park, the book, isn't as good as The Lost World. Lost
But
World
it's still
is
a really
really
good
good.
concept.
It's a very small book. I'm trying to find. I've put it down. There you go. Is it?
Oh, guess what? Cool Hand Luke is a novel.
There you go.
Well,
There you
we
go.
go.
Yep. The
I
novel
don't think-
by Don Pierce was published in 1965. It was adapted in 1967 into the film. All right, so I've got
There you
another
go.
book to read, which is
There.
awesome. Actually, the book Casino by Nicholas Pileggi. Nicholas Pileggi wrote Wise Guys, which became Goodfellas.
Ah,
And he's a little choppy. It's not as awful as The Glass Key was, the Dashiell Hammett for Miller's Crossing, and it's not as good. Nothing nothing recently will be as good as No Country for Old Men. I just absolutely adored that book. But it's a good book, and I'm about a quarter of a way through it. So it's a
because the Casino is quite a long movie, isn't it? That's a good.
Yeah,
that's good 3 hours. That's a good 3.
I don't know if it's quite Great Escape long, but it's got to be up there. It's got to be close to 3
long.
hours.
This is 400. The book is 400 pages, and it's the
Yeah.
real story of I always want to call him it's Lefty Rosenthal. That's the name. I always want to call him Rothstein because that's the character
right.
that Robert De Niro plays in Casino. I think I put Goodfellas ahead of Casino by far, but
Same.
reading the book again, I'm getting better insights. So we'll see. We'll see if that, if that
No, I would
changes.
agree there. I would rank Goodfellas ahead of Casino for sure. But I can guarantee that
Talk
anytime
about
we have
that
a
next
Martin
week.
Scorsese movie, we will be in for a long watch because none of his are under 2.5 hours.
Yeah. There you go. So your homework, people, is Casino.
Oh, so this is actually 2 picks in a row for me. So we got to get a break in that for the next wheel because I believe I was Casino as well.
Yeah, your Casino
Yours
and your
was
Call
Casino.
Handling. Yeah. But I didn't put Call Handling on. So so you got 2. You got 2, so you can take the rails, and then definitely you can guarantee it's probably going to be Jaws next, and we can just sit back and relax and 5 hours. But
So,
hopefully,
I've already dug in on this. Is Cool Hand Luke is essentially a true story. Did not know that.
Oh,
Now we
really?
know.
I did not know that either.
The writer Don Pierce, was incarcerated on a chain gang in Florida, and he based the film on all the stories that he heard while he was incarcerated. So okay, cool. I'm all for it. We're gonna have some historical perspective.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's
looking at the cast. The cast is good. I'm looking like,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, very. And it's funny because while I was watching The Great Escape, and I think I mentioned this on stream last week, Steve McQueen's character reminded me a little bit of Cool Hand Luke in terms of the relentless attempts to escape, the prison that they were in. So go figure, we'd get that picked a week later.
You've been challenged.
Oh, Tommy, let's go. Let's talk. Clear your calendar. Clear your calendar. Absolutely. I mean, as a kid, man, I dug into all the science on it. I was, if I hadn't wanted to be, do archaeology as an older adult, I would have been into the paleontology. Didn't have any interest when I was super young, but then when this film came out, absolutely blew me away. And I love Sam Neill, so
We must have the piano on there.
So I the piano.
I must have put that on there. I love
the
that
Omen.
movie.
I put the Omen on. I think I put Event Horizon on. I hope I did. Yeah. One that I didn't put on the list that I think is also extremely well done is In the Mouth of Madness, which is a psychological thriller that he's in based on a short story by Stephen King. It's about I think he's an insurance guy or a marketing guy working with a writer of horror fiction who can't finish the last book, and he's got to get him to do his thing, and eventually getting drawn into the actual stories that this guy is writing. It's a whole cool thing. So I don't want to spoil it, but In the Mouth of Madness, it's where you get the iconic, if you ever see, there's a meme of Sam Neill on a bus and he just starts freaking out and screaming and screaming and screaming. That's from In the Mouth of Madness. And Critical Drinker did a whole, video essay on it about how it's an underrated film, and it's a really, really good. I think Critical Drinker's got a crush on Sam Neill too, like I do.
I must say, I liked him. There was an old, I think it was part produced by the BBC. Merlin
and Riley, Ace of Spies.
Oh,
He was Riley in Riley, but that was an Australian because he's Australian.
I thought he was New Zealander.
Oh, I think technically he's Northern Ireland, but he moved to Australia and then New Zealand. So he lives in New Zealand now. Technically, he's Northern Irish, whatever you call that. Irish. I'm sorry. I do apologize for offending anyone. I think it's just plain Irish, but he's from Northern
for sure.
Ireland.
What are you saying? It's for Northern Irish.
It's funny. It's I had just read his autobiography this summer because he was near terminally ill. He overcame cancer. He was writing his autobiography like he had no time left, and he did recover. But all the films he worked on, it's another one. It's like, oh, I didn't know he was on that. Oh, I didn't know he was in that. And he just worked his way up in a lot of background roles, and then his big break was the piano, and then from there, he's the reluctant action hero in Jurassic Park.
And he was good. He was he number one pick before? I forgot his name now with a mustache for Indiana Jones. But
he actually was, and
who was going to be? Who had the mustache? What's his name? Who did? I forgot his name. 80s star, big mustache. Come on, chat. Who was up for it? He was in Friends. He was
Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck. Yes, he was the number one. Yeah, yep. Tom Selleck was going to be. Yeah, he was the number one pick to do Indiana Jones. Then Sam Neill. Sam Neill, unfortunately, couldn't do the accent because he just couldn't. So then they had to look elsewhere, and that's why then they kind of.
Yeah, he goes into that in the book. Because he grew up in Northern Ireland and then moved to Australia and then to New Zealand, but came back to Britain. His accent is a mess, and he said people also mistake him for South African, and he's like, I don't even know where that came from, but he has had some difficulties with some roles that he did want, but yeah, just an amazing. And he's another one. Didn't see the need for sequels to Jurassic Park, but he didn't really have anything to say about it, being the actor, not the writer.
But the thing is, he did take the money in the last one, but they unutilized that. That's a terrible movie.
They wanted so bad to get the three of them back together, because there had been two other films with two of the three, and then they wanted so badly to get the three of them back together. But I don't consider them Jurassic Park films.
No, they're awful. They are.
They
don't have the same feel.
Yeah. And Damien Thorne, he is the Prince of Darkness as well. So there's he played a very good the final conflict in the Omen.
Oh yes.
Yeah, he's the Satan himself, son of Satan himself.
He has actually. We're gonna have to do a Sam Neill.
We need to do a Sam Neill.
This just got into. I was about to go.
See, I can't. He's one of those people you don't think of on the top of your head, but he's in so much.
Oh, he does. But he's good. He is good in most of them.
Just looking through some of his filmography now, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't realize it was him. And since he's gotten older, because I picture him more from Jurassic Park, but I didn't realize he was in Peaky Blinders as well. He was that inspector, Chester Campbell, and he was great in that. I just until I'm looking at it now, and looking at some of his pictures side by side, I never realized that was him.
He was in The Tudors. He was Wolsey, Cardinal Wolsey in The Tudors. I mean, the man just works.
Yeah.
He was in his first, and I can't remember what the very first film was. Now it's gonna bother. A Cry in the Dark. Was he in that one?
He was.
But
he was in Hunt for the Wilder People too.
Hunt for the Wilder People. Yeah,
I didn't realize that was him this whole time.
That was him. So, but yeah, and he got his break late. He was like 30 when he got his first break. Just kind of working hard and working a little bit more behind the camera, and then got in front of the camera, and good stuff.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah,
Have
I'm all for a
Even
So for Jurassic Park, what other ones we got on there?
so I was just going to
Event
say
Horizon. Event Horizon's got to be on there. Is it Sandy? Who's gonna be quick?
that I don't know actually.
I hope I did. I would be surprised if I didn't. I might not have. I might have
Event
thought it
Horizon,
wasn't good enough.
Piano. They've
I
got
did. I
Jurassic
put
Park.
Event Horizon on.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So we got 3. We got 3 of these. At minimum, must be.
Oh my God. And what have we forgotten? The Hunt for Red October.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but he's not the main person in that.
He's not the main, but he's there. He's got some good lines, and he dies. And yes, we have the pianist and the piano and the well, he's not in the Omen. He's in the Final Conflict. So
Is he in
yeah,
the
we've got
pianist?
No, he's in the piano. I was just going
Oh,
alphabetical
okay. I was gonna
order.
say, I'm like, I don't even
I'm just
remember being
reading
in that
down
one.
alphabetical order here.
Gotcha. Okay.
But no, so that's 4. So we've got, let's say we got Jurassic Park, the piano, we've got the Hunt for Red October, and Event
We got the
Horizon.
Hunt
We've got
Road.
4.
We got the Hunt Road.
Yeah. We
Ah,
have.
there we
Oh
go.
yeah, we've got Hunt for Red October for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So well, this is cool.
There you
Yes.
go. There you go.
All hail
You can geek out, girly out, or whatever on those. We can let you have a little crush, when the will tells you. He probably does it all 4 in a row. He probably does.
It could. We could have that
We could.
connective thread through Sam Neill. Yep. We have Sir Alec, and then we're gonna start picking up the Alec Guinness and the Peter O'Toole's, and yeah.
That's it. Bicentennial Man, was he in that? Because that's an awful.
Yeah,
movie.
he was. He was in that.
Oh, God, yeah. That's why when you watch it and you kind of take it out of your brain. That is a really, really bad movie.
Yeah.
But okay, it's coming 3 hours. There you go, on the 3-hour mark. Everybody, thank you
Thanks
for
to Sam Neill.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you for Sam Neill.
You got us
last
over the
10 minutes.
finish line.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, Sandy, anything coming up? What embassies? Architectural? Go.
I am, I'm really getting close. I think I only have 33 left to visit. This weekend it was Zambia, and I forget which other one I visited. So now we're really in the ones that may generate some negative vibes. So Pakistan, Israel, yeah, those are coming up soon. But otherwise, I'm working
They're going to
on
be
some.
in comments.
Yeah, your
Oh, yeah.
comment section's
They're
gonna be
like-
wild.
You never know, like, the embassy of Tanzania the other day got a whole bunch of nastiness, and I just think it's funny. Most of the times I reply, and I'll just say, "Hi, thanks for your comment. I'm doing an architectural survey. This is part of my logs," and then probably 50% of the time people come back and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That's really interesting. Good luck to you." And they turn it around, and they were just nasty by instinct.
I guess, and that's
but-
for you, Tom
Classic
B with
internet people.
£2. I
I'm
have something to say.
I'm working on
Make it
just
dummy.
some classes that I'm teaching in a couple of months, and then preparing for my journey across the pond in November. So that's what
Nice.
I'm working on now.
Yeah, so we get nice and wet and windy. Don't worry, it will be here. Jay, what you got?
So I'm getting back into the swing of things. It's been honestly a incredibly busy few weeks since I've been back from my honeymoon, so I haven't really posted much. I've done too much in terms of streaming. Actually, I've done nothing in terms of streaming minus this stream. So I'm going to be kicking things back into action. I'm going to be working on a Beetlejuice review because I saw that last night. So that should hopefully be out this weekend. And then in about an hour, I will be on the RNG podcast with Carl from the RNG podcast. So that'll be a fun one. I think it's just him and I having a little bit of a chit chat on stream. So that'll be good. Outside of that, honestly, as always, the schedule is very fluid, kind of doing things as I get the time to before I can hammer down a more structured schedule for the channel.
Excellent. Now I have to put this up because he did pay £2 to say it. Stacey. Had to do it. Now I'm going to let that one ride because literally it was Abe's fault last time and Hamanara for literally derailing one of Tom B's streams. Not my fault. That's it. But myself, I'm going to literally scream and poop my pants some more playing Beyond Handwell. Loving the game, hating the game. So
It's been
yeah,
fun watching for sure.
no, it's horrid. It's horrid. Literally, it is horrid. So yeah, if you really want a Halloween scream, that is it. I'm enjoying. I say this. I'm enjoying playing it. I hate playing it, and I mean that by the love of the developers. They are evil people. They are evil, but it has been a laugh. Things, but my blood pressure, I think I said these guys, is literally going through the roof every time I play that. It is horrid. It's things, but Tombi, we're not a £2. I was like, go into food. It's horrid. No,
Well, you have to read the other one.
that's how I've read that one. That's good. Not just the first one. I get, well, yes, you do get constant abuse. This is needed. That's it. Once he goes on, Sandy, you know what is Abe's theme tune? That sandstorm thing.
Yeah, with the flute.
Okay. This is the story. We managed to find one that goes like this, and literally, it was you, Jay, wasn't it? Jay came in with this really nice, really supportive comment. So Tombi reacted in this heartwarming way to this supportive comment that Jay just put. And I can't remember what you said. I think you said about the community getting together. It's really nice, you know, everybody talking to it, like something like that. And then Tombi went into Tombi, I'm going to be supportive. You're being supportive. Don't worry. Everybody, you know, we're here for each other. And then Abe said, let's find this. Can you find the most stupid? We found it. And then we played it. Literally at the moment that Tombi was being like so sincere and when he was being really serious, and then in the background it just, and we didn't know because of course there's a delay to the blurbs,
right?
So there's a delay, so we didn't know when we pressed click play that he was going to be this, he was going to react in this really eloquent way, and then he was being really serious, and then all of a sudden came through, and it was so like, oh my god, I think I nearly wet myself. Abe definitely, and literally we were literally all three of us were literally, you know, when it hurts when you're laughing. And the worst thing is Tommy, bless him, he was trying to get over the line, but this in his ear was so that's what this one, it was.
You gotta love it.
Sandy
you gotta
Q,
love those blurbs.
Yeah, Sandy Q is awesome. Their take is great. Let's go. And I'm apparently something else. Played it for 30 minutes straight. We did. Yeah, we give you that. We did. Every time that it was cutscenes, that was it. It was a funny 1 o'clock in the morning, just literally who's streaming. Let's take the piss. And he didn't mind really. We were the only people in chat. Only kidding. But yeah, everybody, I really hope you enjoyed the show. Again, Casino, I think we've all agreed it's next week.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, we're all free.
I may have an issue next week.
Okay.
We'll chat.
We'll chat. Okay, so
I have to get out of something.
The next one. We're going to be the next one. But yeah, everybody, Homework, Casino, it's a good one. Most people watched it, but we're going to talk about it. So enjoy. Yeah, Halloween, a little bit early for Halloween. But as we said, this is a good one to start with. There are better thriller Halloweens out there. But until next time, from the guys, bye.
Bye.